My name is Carlos Cisco. I recently was a writer on Star Trek Discovery Season 4, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to Kneel Before Pod, the podcast that knows all about the meaning of life and other things. I'm your host Craig, and we are here to discuss the fifth and final season of Star Trek Discovery. Can you believe it came to an end? Well, it did, and we're here to talk about it. Joining me for this is my usual Star Trek compatriot. It's Chris. Hello. Didn't beam me in this time, you're already here.
Hello. I'm already here.
You double tapped your comm badge and just magically appeared.
I know, I also changed my outfit.
Yeah? You can do that. You can do anything.
I was sitting here in a hoodie and joggies, and then I thought, do you know what? I'm a professional broadcaster. Let me tap my badge and look fancy for this podcast.
For this audio medium.
People can tell. People can tell that I'm now in my official podcast regalia.
It's like when you answer phones for a living and you get all that coaching that says, smile when you answer the phone because people on the phone can tell when you're not smiling. Sure they can.
Exactly. It's when you hear people on the radio fake laughing through everything, trying to do that smile.
Yeah, as they die a little inside. Anyway, Star Trek Discovery Season 5. Final season. Slightly unexpected final season, certainly for the cast and writers and anybody involved in it. What did you think of this final season without spoiling?
Without spoiling, I struggled a little bit with this season. I'm not going to lie, it kind of slipped being appointment viewing for me. It had a bit of a shaky start and it got better towards the end of the season, I thought. But yeah, if this wasn't its final season, I might have given up at the beginning. I'm not going to lie.
And if you hadn't committed to a recording at the end of it?
Oh no, I'd ditch this. It'd be fine.
Fantastic. It's good to know that these commitments can just be cancelled. That makes me feel great as a leader. I'm kind of similar. Not that I would have abandoned it, because I'm still in that mold of, it's Star Trek, so I'll watch it regardless of what it is. I'm still doing that. I don't know if I'll ever break that. And to be fair, I don't think Star Trek has ever been bad enough to push me out of the make sure you watch everything mindset, unlike Star Wars, where I gave up on that pretty much as soon as they started their TV journey, so that was a link easily broken. But this, I enjoyed some of the season. I think the first half was pretty weak, but there's some really strong stuff in its second half, and I thought the ending was okay in places. There are some severe problems I have with it that we'll get into, and there's some stupid stuff that happens throughout the season that, again, we'll get into. But I did enjoy some of this, and like I said, the second half of the season was a bit stronger. I found the central mystery / scavenger hunt premise not that great, but some of the stuff they ended up doing associated with that was okay. So basically a standard season of Discovery, to be honest. At least since season 3, since they moved into this new formula of we're in the future and we're doing stuff, which is always Star Trek, but they're even further in the future and doing stuff.
Yes.
I was going to say always Star Trek. That prequel film, anyone that they want to make that's maybe set now? Yeah, let's not talk about that. Shambles. But yeah, it was an uneven season, shall we say. So shall we go to Black Alert one final time and just dive right into the spoilers of the season?
Let's.
Black Alert. Black Alert. Black Alert.
Okay, we have a plot that's encompassed the whole season, and it was essentially a scavenger hunt or a fetch quest, whatever you want to call it. It's a sequel to a Star Trek The Next Generation episode called The Chase, which hilariously explains why every alien in the Star Trek universe just looks like humans with funny foreheads. It's because an alien species long in the past decided to mess with the primordial soup of every, or at least many, races in the galaxy to create them, and that's why they all look similar. So they're all connected. We're all connected, isn't that nice? What did you think of the scavenger hunt thing? Do you think that was a good way to fill the season, or at least provide excuses for us to have adventures? And were you familiar enough with that TNG episode to care about why they would do a sequel to it?
I wasn't that familiar with. I remembered bits of it, and they showed the screen capture from it is part of this in their archives. And I found it interesting as a way of them exploring different places, giving them a reason to kind of jump around. And Discovery always doesn't so much struggle with it, but it's always got to sort of have an excuse of why Discovery is the perfect ship for this task, right? It's got to be, there's these signals that are popping up and they could be anywhere and it takes ages to get there at warp and we need a ship that can loop there faster than anyone else. And again, this is a perfect job for Discovery, right? We've got clues that could be literally anywhere. We've got a scientific crew that are able to figure these sort of things out. They're good with this sort of challenge. Hey, go and find these MacGuffins for us. And that they do. So it sort of worked as that kind of premise. I didn't think that was too bad. I did have problems with the execution of the race or the number of people trying to get these previously forgotten MacGuffins that I didn't think worked through the season, or it wasn't consistent enough through the season. I didn't feel that they were being challenged as much by people trying to find these things as like, hey, we're just accidentally stumbling across this stuff and it happens to be working for us. There was elements of that to me that I just didn't think worked that well. What did you think of it?
The main issue I had was with the clues themselves. The clues aren't clever. They're not interesting. And obviously they set up this, you have to be worthy to solve all these clues and pass the test and gain access to this technology. We need it to be someone that proves themselves to be worthy of that responsibility. And then you get these clues that anybody could solve. Yes, there's a kind of half-baked lesson attached to it, and the lesson was always the values they're already living. We need to have respect for other cultures. Well, we already do that. We need to have respect for the past and not disturb the sacred place. Well, we already knew that that was a thing. So nobody was really learning anything. Yeah, we already do that. So we're just doubling down on what we already know. And then some of the puzzles, they were either so far-fetched that they would never have solved them without, for example, the convenience of a former smuggler around that they can ask about this archive library thing that nobody knows about. But then when you get there, it turns out everybody knows about it because, oh yeah, the Breen have stuff here too. It's fine. It's very well known. It's effectively an intergalactic pop-up, isn't it? It shows up in different locations.
I like it. It's like a travelling library. I totally agree with you about some of the puzzles. I also was sitting thinking, by the time we're getting like 2 or 3 in the final episode, you get the line from the progenitor, which is, you have passed all the tests and therefore you are worthy. No. She passed the final test. You don't know if she did any of the other stuff. Burnham could have sent as many ensigns as she wanted to do all the other missions. And then at the end, she's like, yeah, I'm doing this bit now. As far as you know, she's not passed any of the tests. It could have been Stamets and Tilly and anyone else doing all the other challenges.
Or Maul just figuring out that it's the different triangles she needs to make.
Yeah, so stolen the key, got in there, figured out the triangle thing, did none of the other challenges. You're worthy. Yeah, sure. Okay, ta.
We just put in the level select cheat and now we're here.
Yeah, there was a bit of, the real test was actually making sure you didn't kill anyone. Yeah, but they're the Starfleet. They wouldn't have done that anyway, okay? Basically, we've created these tests so that you need to be in Starfleet and following Starfleet's values in order to get this.
Yeah.
With an interesting twist of being, you've got to be evil as sin in order to get these clues.
There was the one puzzle that was just, we just need to know what these numbers mean. Okay, that seems easy enough. Oh yeah, that's just the number 3. That means that the clue's over there. Okay, that was easy.
That was kind of the thing, wasn't it? Don't get me wrong, the clues a lot of the time and the getting of the MacGuffin was kind of almost secondary to an interesting place that they visit or an interesting culture they come across or part of something that they wrapped it round that made those episodes better. That I'll give them. I'll allow them to have. But the overall chase to me, I was a bit like, this seems like something, and I think we've said this about Discovery before, this seems like something that previously could have been like an episode of Star Trek.
Well, it was.
Yeah, exactly. This could have been just a single episode of, hey, we're following these random clues. Oh, it says go to this planet. Well, for any other ship, that would have been like a week at warp. But for us, bloop, here we are. What's the clue? There it is.
Let's be generous and say a 2-parter. We could get a 2-parter out of this. 1 episode of chasing down the clues, the 2nd episode of dealing with the tech.
What we've got, yeah. And somehow the baddies have found us.
The chase was just 1 episode.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a little bit where I was like, does this need to be the whole season? I thought it might have been faked out at some point and been a half-season thing, and then they were going to tonally shift towards the end of the season.
Nope.
But it didn't. They stuck consistent with it.
Yeah. Structurally, it was very similar to the last season, as in you had the DMA just wreaking havoc throughout the galaxy, and Discovery would head somewhere that it had been and survey the devastation, and then you get an episode out of it. So like that, it was an excuse to just go somewhere and have an adventure. Which Star Trek never really needed before in its heyday. The Next Generation, it was Captain's log, Starfleet have told us to go here, so we're going here. That was it. That's why we're here. You don't need a galaxy-ending scenario to prompt a mission.
We're en route to blah, and then they'll go out on the bridge and they'll be like, Captain, we've detected a signal over that way. Oh, well, we don't need to be at blah for another week, so let's divert and investigate the signal, and then that would be it. Then your episode happens. It doesn't necessarily need to be even Starfleet told us to go and look at this. Hey, something caught our attention on our way past.
If you want to mix it up, we received a distress call, and that's our episode now.
Yeah, you thought we were going off to do this mission. Now we're not. We're going off and doing this other thing.
Yeah. Although one thing I will say about the arc, or the season-long arc, is I do think Maul and Locke were a very refreshing example of villains for the franchise because, well, they can give the technology to people that will end the universe, but they're not going to end the universe. They're just pirates or scavengers, or as they call them, couriers. But they know what they're doing. They're used to running away from the law. They know a bunch of tricks that Starfleet don't know. They're very resourceful and able to think quickly on their feet. And one thing I liked about it is they were able to be one step ahead of Burnham a lot of the time, because in previous seasons, it's always been Burnham's amazing at everything and no one can challenge her. They've even introduced characters that exist so that she can tell them how great she is. It's quite transparent and it takes away from the character, because if she's good, just let her be good at what she does. But also the fallibility angle is something that I like to see. So it was good in that first episode, you had Maul and Locke running away and then her having no idea where they were going and not being able to keep up with them. I liked that. And I liked that they did at least some of that. I would have quite liked more of that, actually, just to be more of a race against them to get things. Maybe Discovery get some clues, they get some clues, and they have to figure out some way to work together to assemble them towards the end.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They were refreshing as villains to a point. The problem for me is that a lot of the time they would turn up, especially in the early episodes, they would turn up despite the fact they hadn't had any of the previous clues, or they hadn't found out that extra piece of information that Discovery knew, and it'd be like, how come they're here already? Yeah, how come they're here already? How do they know to come to this particular spot? How did they even get here before you? You're in this ship that can bloop wherever it wants, and somehow this lot are ahead of you. So there was a little bit of that to me, where I was like, they're kind of ultra effective until they aren't. And the plot says, no, we need them to be more incompetent now, or we need them to muck up on this bit now. And that, I was a little bit like, I could have done without that. But I do agree with you. They were different villains, in inverted commas, for a change, because, like you say, they weren't after the power for themselves. Initially, it was to sort of buy themselves out, to solve the problem, to get away from the fact that they're being pursued themselves. I think the insight into their life came a little bit too late in the season for me. I don't know if I would have preferred a bit of their story more up front, because we only really got the insight into their past. Now, was it the ISS episode? Trying to remember now.
Yeah, it would have been the ISS Enterprise episode, because you had the flashbacks where Maul and Locke were always standing in a big expansive shuttle bay. They were never anywhere else.
Yes, exactly. They were in that big shuttle bay that was used later.
The volume room.
The big volume room. Yeah, exactly. So you got the story there, and I don't know if I would have preferred it sort of dripped throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, they act as if, we're married is a big revelation, which I guess for the Breen it kind of was, but I didn't need to wait to find out that information because I didn't really care whether they were married or not. I was okay with the fact that they were in a relationship. It was simple as that. They're an intergalactic Bonnie and Clyde, effectively. They're criminals that just want to be together and get away from everybody that's pursuing them. That's enough, really.
Yeah, I was fine with that. And it was kind of the foil to Burnham and Book as well, where they had that kind of relationship for a bit in that time window that we've never really seen, where the two of them were running about doing missions and stuff. So I did like elements of that.
But they didn't get together until after that had ended, until season 3.
Yeah.
So the comparison wasn't one-to-one like they were trying to tell us it was.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
And you did not need the familial connection between Book and Maul because they did nothing with it. It came to absolutely nothing. It didn't inform their conversations much, other than Book saying, I was raised by your father. He was my mentor. Oh, great. Okay. We're going to explain why he abandoned her? No, we're not going to do that. And doesn't that paint him in a particularly negative light because he would rather have raised Book than his own daughter? You just raised too many questions there with that you didn't bother to answer. So it could have just been, we're both couriers. I will try and connect with her on that level. That's all you needed.
That would have been enough for me. I totally agree with you. I don't think they did enough with that. And even towards the end of the season, there's not really a wraparound thing to it. There's not even a, hey, I talked her out of something all the way up to the end there. She very much progresses to having her own flagship by the end of it. There is no subtlety to it by the end. So I agree with you. They didn't really do anything with it. I don't know if it was because they were sitting there and they had all the different character names on the board and they're like, hey, we've not got enough stuff for Book this season. We need something that ties them to the rest of the thing. And that's what they wrote down. And I don't think it was necessary. I think you could have cut all that out. It wouldn't have made a blind bit of difference.
Well, considering they didn't bother using it anyway, it's not as if they did flashbacks to Book's childhood with Cleveland Booker the third or whatever it is, and flashbacks to Maul's childhood with being abandoned and stuff like that. It ended up being a hiding to nothing, which I found very frustrating. And also it's the whole, oh yeah, it just so happens that she's the closest thing I have left to a family. It makes the universe smaller. It just so happens that I'm connected to this person we're chasing.
Yeah, of all the people. I mean, that's a Star Trek conceit a lot of the time as well, isn't it?
Of this era, yes.
The universe is vast, and yet somehow it all ties back to this one person or these two or three people, and you're like, oh, of course it is. Of course it's them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. That didn't really work for me. And similar, this revelation that Locke is the heir to the entire empire.
Yeah.
By the end of the season, it's gone from he's been cast out and is being chased to being, oh no, actually, he's the kingmaker in this entire situation. And they've just let him run around for all this time. They had him manning the shuttle bay for a bit. He's like, you, go off and inspect the boxes. What? Really? This is the heir to the throne, apparently, and the one that can make everyone king. But hey, go off and check the boxes, will you? We've got a trade run coming in. They're bringing in the good Romulan stuff.
And we're going to leave this shifty mercenary unsupervised in the shuttle bay as well.
Yes. There's no way this could possibly go wrong.
No one notices what they're doing.
And then at the end, it's, I sentence you to death, but also I apparently need you in order to claim the throne, the Empire. I lost track. I don't know enough about what happened in the first place to now know what you're doing.
And then he dies anyway.
And then he dies anyway, exactly.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that Locke had more potential than he had time to fulfill. And some of it will have to do with the fact it's a shorter season. But at the same time, it's how you spend that time. And I think they wasted some of it.
Yeah, there was parts of it that were a waste. There was little throwaway things. There were also characters that just didn't get things to do, but we'll come across that.
Oh, yes.
Come across that as we talk, I think. I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Well, let's move on to Burnham then, since she's our central focus. She's the central focus for the show, always has been. And in fairness to them, they stay true to that right until the final scene. So at least someone knows what the show is or was. And whether you like that or not is up for debate, but there's no denying what the show was, and it stuck to that throughout. Even with all the changes, it was always about Burnham. It's the first Star Trek show to centre on a single character in ways that others hadn't, and for better or for worse, it was that throughout. In terms of her having a strong arc this season, though, I don't really think she had one. They crowbarred in this, I'm looking for meaning and purpose thing, and I thought, well, I thought you'd already found that. You're Captain of Discovery. I thought that was what you were happy doing. Where's this come from? Why are you suddenly uncertain about your place in the universe? Obviously, it's to inform the personal revelation she has later on in the season, but I feel like she already got there. I don't understand where the uncertainty came from all of a sudden.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Sorry, this is going to sound a lot like I'm just agreeing, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I didn't understand where that came from. In previous seasons, we've had I don't know if I can be captain. I don't know if the crew will respect me because I betrayed Starfleet and did all this. So she's had this progressive arc all the way through back to being a captain again, respected by the crew, going through that. For her to suddenly turn around and go, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You're pretty much Starfleet personified at this point. You've brought the Federation back from the brink. You've solved all these different crises and you think you're not worth it? I'm struggling to believe that. There's modesty and then there's, I don't know what.
How many apocalypses have you prevented?
Yeah, pretty much savior of the universe through time and space, literally. You've moved from one crisis to the other, solving them all as you went. So... yeah, why now? Why suddenly think, oh, maybe I'm not fit enough to sit in the captain's chair? Really? If not you, then who's worthy at this point?
Saru, he's chill about it.
Yeah, that's true. He's worthy. Okay, so apart from Saru, maybe Tilly. I'd put Tilly in the chair. But maybe apart from Tilly, Saru, yeah. I didn't quite get that. I didn't think she had much of an arc apart from... there was the on-off thing with Book again, and I'm like, are we not over this already? I thought you'd already confessed your love to each other. I genuinely thought that had already happened in this show. I've invented scenes in my head, which is either good or bad for my conscience, where they had already confessed their love for each other.
Yes, but then he went to do his community service and they didn't text, so that reset them somewhat.
Yeah, he went away and he was picking litter in space or whatever he was doing, and X amount of time has passed since the last time and now, and he didn't send enough text messages, space text messages while he was away. I don't know. Didn't they solve this at the end of the last season? Wasn't it the fact that she still cared for him was the reason that he was pretty much getting community service instead of shipped off somewhere? I don't get that either. There was a lot I didn't get this season. And I don't know if it's because I've invented a completely different show in my head or not.
Well, one of the problems is they don't seem to want to capitalise on the stuff that they had last season that would make sense. It's happened before. Well, it's happened a number of times. One of the glaring examples was at the end of season 3 when Burnham put Stamets off the ship because he's the only spore drive guy and they needed to keep him safe. And Stamets didn't like that because he was getting taken away from Adira and so on. And it suggested that there was going to be some animosity there. And then Burnham gets made captain. So great, she's now serving with someone that doesn't like her or has issues with her. And then the next season it's gone. They don't bring it up again. Similarly here, you could have had Burnham salty about the fact that Book betrayed her and ran away and blew up the DMA and all that stuff. She could have been upset with him because of doing that, feeling like it was some kind of personal betrayal. But it doesn't get brought up. It's just, oh yeah, we didn't talk. And why didn't we talk? I don't know. We just didn't. And then at the end of the season, they're like, yeah, well, should we give this a go and actually see each other and talk to each other? Yeah, let's do that. There's no arc there. Although they do take time during a very dangerous undercover mission to slink off and have a chat about their feelings, because that's the right time and place to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the time.
We're dressed as Breen. We could get caught at any moment, but let's go and have a chat about our feelings. Also, we're on a clock, but we've got time for this.
Yeah. The thing is they kept seeding it throughout the season where there would be, oh, I don't know if I want to take Book with me because it's going to be all awkward and cringy. I don't know. And you're like, you've been through this before. You know the guy. You've worked with the guy. You've lived with the guy. I don't get where this all went awkward again. It's that, like you say, they do a character reset at the end of every season and then you've just got to try and figure out where the writers thought things happened in between. There's a lot of things that are just unsaid and then you go, okay, I don't get where this character trait came from, where this set of feelings came from. So yeah, I don't think there was a big progression for Burnham in this because I don't get where she would have gone that was any different. It seemed like a predestined conclusion that who was going to be in front of the machine by the end of this, Burnham. Was she going to use it to do something terrible? No. I didn't suspect that anyone else was going to be left with a choice as to what to do with the progenitor tech at the end.
Yeah, it was kind of a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I think if there had been any doubt, so if you'd had Book die partway through the season, similar to Locke, you've got the two of them trying to get the tech to try and do something, and then she had to decide if she was going to use it, if she was going to destroy it. Then you would have had that bit of conflict or that bit of development or that change, and I don't think we got that.
No. Although I did like the head trip when she confessed her inner anxieties. And it was a very clever meta-commentary on Burnham and the show itself. The idea of, I have to work really hard every day to prove that I'm worthy of sitting in this chair. And it's not fair. I don't like it. I just want to not feel this stressed all the time. And obviously, Discovery has received a lot of criticism, and some of it in very bad faith, about Burnham, a black woman, as the lead of the show, as a captain of a ship. And I think there's a little bit of self-awareness on the writer's part that they maybe wrote her wrong as a consequence of that. They didn't allow her to actually be a real fallible person in a lot of cases. So it's the idea of, I really hate that I have to be perfect all the time. And it's that erroneous assumption that the writers made throughout the series to write her that way, but it's essentially manifested itself as a bit of a character flaw, which I quite like. I've seen a few examples of writers acknowledging that they've made a mistake and then folding that into the character and making them flawed in their own way. So I liked that. And it was quite cool how she was trying to game the test. She was trying to figure out what she needs to do to pass the test, rather than just being open and honest with herself, which is what really passes the test, rather than, okay, it's obviously a puzzle, so I'm going to leave breadcrumbs as I walk around here and try and find my way back to the thing. No. The point is honesty. That's the point of the test. And you can't just game that. You can't pretend that you're being honest. And somehow the AI knows that she's being honest. But also that's a test that Maul could have easily passed. She could have just been honest about something. Any kind of emotional honesty would probably have done the job. But from Burnham's point of view, I really liked it. I liked the awareness of, here's the reaction to me as a character to this show and to everything that surrounds it. And here's how that's part of the character now. And her admitting that, yeah, I feel this pressure. I feel the weight on my shoulders and I'm sick of it. I want to just chill out a bit. I want some help. I like that.
You make a good point.
I think it's good when writers make up for their mistakes by doing stuff like that. I don't think it forgives necessarily some of the mistakes they've made, but also it just shows there's a bit of growth there. And it lets the character grow as well. And it lets you see a bit inside them in ways that you didn't before. So I'm always keen for that. Otherwise, what's the point in this head trip thing?
Yeah, and if you're going to go into the head of a character in that show, well, Burnham's the one that you're going to do. Like you say, she's the centre of this. So, of course, you want to explore inside her psyche, giving her book as the therapist or the assistant to help her through the journey. Lets you explore all these things that are unsaid and undone. And I think it worked from that point of view. Also, big space library. I approve of Big Space Library. I thought Big Space Library was cool, but I agree with what you said earlier on. Why doesn't the Federation know about Big Space Library? Surely the Federation planets have given stuff to Big Space Library?
You'd think so.
Seems odd that no one would be like, hey, what about Big Space Library if you're looking for a book?
Intergalactic pop-up. That's what it is.
Intergalactic pop-up.
What a great modernisation of the Badlands, by the way. When you saw it in Deep Space Nine and Voyager, there was some orange stuff or whatever at the top and bottom, and there would be occasionally a funnel that might hit them. But in this, you could see why. Yeah, this would be tricky to navigate, because look at it. I felt like it looked easy to navigate in Deep Space Nine.
It did a bit. I agree with you. It was the little funnels popping up.
Yeah.
I always thought the Badlands kind of looked like they had reskinned the game that they played in TNG. You know, the one that sort of rewrote everyone. It always kind of looked like they had reskinned that basic animation and turned that into the Badlands.
But yeah, in this, it was just a massive storm, like this big threatening, destructive storm. It was cool. I guess that's how it was always supposed to look. The big space library, they did it in Doctor Who as well. They had a giant library in Doctor Who.
Of course, Doctor Who's had a giant space library. That makes sense.
It was on a planet in that one, though. It wasn't a space station or whatever that was.
Was the entire planet a library?
Yes.
Yeah, of course it was.
It was an interesting concept, the idea of this cultural preservation and it not being necessarily owned by anybody or not aligned to anybody. There's no discrimination here. It's about the preservation of the culture. It's about the preservation of the texts. It's about keeping everything accessible. Although if you're rude, you won't let you in.
If you're rude, they won't let you in. And if you're the last one, they will just give you anything that belongs to your culture for you to destroy.
Yeah, so that Book can go plant a tree.
You can plant a tree that grows wax? I don't understand. But yeah.
It's the last part of his planet left. That was okay. I like the big space library as an idea. We'll never see it again, probably. But the fact that the solving of that particular clue just so happened to need the services of someone that had been a smuggler or whatever in a previous life who happened to be on the ship. It seems like something that Kovacs should have told them about.
For that one episode only. Or was it 2 episodes? It was like, oh yeah, I used to be a smuggler of fine books.
Yeah. So basically they're trying to turn Jet Reno into a bit of a Pelia from Strange New Worlds. I half expected her to show up at the library. Maybe she's finally dead after all this time. But that would have been a bit of fan service that I would have accepted, actually. Oh, there she is. She's still alive 1,000 years later. That's fine. I don't want to get to the ending in terms of how it ends for Burnham yet, because I feel like the ending is fun enough, a bolt-on conversation because, well, it is a bit of a bolt-on, isn't it? It's almost like you get the final season and then they did a 20-minute epilogue that they just stitched onto it. You could have almost stitched that onto the end of any season. Yeah,
I'll agree with you on that. Again, it did feel a bit tacked on. I don't know if the original ending would have been maybe the wedding. I thought the wedding was probably the natural end of the season.
Yeah. You can almost see the oh, Kovic wants us to go on a mission. Let's go. And then roll credits. See you next season.
Roll credits. Yeah, let's see what the mission is for the next season. I absolutely agree with you. I think that's the natural end point, and then everything post that was them wrapping up. But yeah, we can probably talk about that.
We'll get to it, yeah. Once we bring it all to that point. Let's talk a bit about Culber. I think outside of Burnham and Book, he gets the most focus of any character. And I find it quite interesting, putting him on a bit of a spiritual journey. He's inhabited by a trill for a bit, and then it warps his perception of the universe and the way that he sees life and all this stuff. He can't parse it, he can't figure it all out, and ultimately heads down this spiritual path because his grandmother was very spiritual, yet a woman of science because she was a doctor like he is, and he couldn't understand how she managed to have faith when her mind was so scientific, but he comes along to accept that to some degree and explores it. What did you think of the way that progressed? I thought it was very good, and I'll get into that in a bit.
Okay, so here's where we might disagree. I didn't like some of how this was deployed in the season. I kind of get that it changed his outlook spiritually a bit. I don't understand why he didn't feel he was able to talk to Paul about it. Sorry, Stamets about it the whole time.
Yeah, Paul's fine. That's also
Paul, yeah.
If you feel like you're on a first name basis, then fair enough.
I feel that I'm on a first name basis with him now after 5 seasons. I didn't understand why he wouldn't talk to Stamets about it and work his way through it. And as much as he gives the explanation, I think he does it in a conversation with Book, I think he does it in a conversation with Tilly as well. I didn't understand his unwillingness to explain, because one of the things I've liked about their relationship through these seasons, this is a couple that's developed through the seasons, right? That you don't get very often in other Star Trek. You don't get to see people having normal relationship stuff a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You've got this really strong established relationship. You've seen them go through quite a lot over the seasons, including his own death. So you've seen him go through a lot, and I don't understand how this was a stopping point, because you've already seen him go through a whole life-death experience and a what am I now experience in previous seasons. So to then have him now feeling spiritual, having this moment, I didn't quite believe. I thought it sort of went against what we've already, not what we've already established with the character, that's probably the wrong way of putting it, but it feels like something he would have already went through or would have already be thinking about before the Trill experience. I get how the Trill experience might have enhanced it. That temporary experience of seeing everything from a different point of view would maybe clarify some things, but he's already had the outer body experience, so that's what I didn't quite believe in. I just don't think it came to a satisfactory conclusion for me. It sort of felt like every once in a while they would do a check-in on the spiritual journey. I'm waiting for what this is going to lead to, and what it led to was, in the height of a battle, the ship's doctor decides to sod off with Book for a bit because he has a feeling. Okay, well, good job they're not in the firefight that's going to lead to death and stuff, because the doctor just left.
He's not the only doctor, though. I don't think he's even the chief medical officer.
Maybe. Is he just the counsellor now?
We've never met the chief engineer either. They're around somewhere.
Well, that's true. Somewhere there's a very angry chief engineer because they keep breaking everything. But yeah, I kind of thought he's key medical stuff and then goes away during the thing. But yeah, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe he's not the chief guy, and let's face it, they live in absolute future land where anything is possible until it's not possible, and then Locke dies. So it's fine.
Also, if Culber hadn't went on that mission, it would have failed, because he was the only one that knew the frequency or whatever it was to tune the tractor beam.
That is absolutely true, and he just knew that is where he needed to be, and everyone was totally okay with it, so it's all fine.
Yeah, it's Discovery. You can do whatever you want. There's no authority. There's no hierarchy.
Yeah, no one says no. It's fine. It's Colbert. He's allowed it. He's off on a spiritual journey, everyone. Let him have his spiritual journey. He needs to do this.
He's on a spiritual journey. He's told everyone except Stamets about.
Everyone else is fed up of hearing about his spiritual journey. Stamets is clueless. It's fine, everyone. It's all good. You obviously got something out of this a little bit more than I did. I found it a bit frustrating at points. So give me you might win me round on this.
Let's see. I think in my brain I'd adopted the same stance as the writers, as in stuff that happened in previous seasons didn't actually happen. It's fine. We don't have to worry about it. So this whole coming back from the dead thing, yes, that would probably trigger some kind of spiritual crisis in almost anybody, I think. It would be. I was dead and now I'm not. What's going on here? They did all the stuff when he came back about, I've got this brand new body, there's no scars on it or whatever. I don't know if he had scars before, but I'm sure they mentioned that. Maybe that was in Supernatural. Maybe it's in both. I can't remember.
I've not rewatched a lot of the previous Discovery stuff, but I think when he came back, there was a line where he had a shuttle accident or he did something as a cadet and he had a cut and now it's not there anymore and it was part of his history.
Yeah, so they did some of that at that time, but that was in a previous season written by other people, so we don't need to factor that in. Although they do factor it in. When he talks to Tilly, he mentions, I've come back from the dead, and how that was feeding into this whole crisis that he was having. The prompt for that conversation with Tilly was hilarious, by the way. She walks in and says, hi, I need to fiddle with something down there. And he's like, yeah, sure. And Tilly turns and says, you okay? He's like, not really, but you're busy, so not now. And then find me later and we'll have a chat. And then they do. It's just such this weird, it makes it look like he was fishing for sympathy in a way. I'm just going to stand here looking forlorn and then someone will ask how I'm doing and then I'll unload. The equivalent of the people on Facebook that say, I'm really angry right now, but they don't give details because they want people to comment with, what's wrong? DM me or whatever.
You okay, hun?
Stuff like that, yeah. PM me.
PM me for details. I'm so upset. Oh, why? What's wrong? Oh, I can't say.
I don't think that's quite what was happening here, but it came across a little bit like that. I think it was more a clumsy prompt to get these characters talking than it wasn't written in a sophisticated enough way for it to seem natural. I think that's more what it was. And I do agree that the whole not talking to Stamets thing about it didn't really make a lot of sense, although I followed the logic of he won't understand what this means, as in he's a man of science, he only believes in science, so this whole spiritual thing doesn't make sense to him, he's just going to dismiss it. They should have given us the scene where Stamets effectively dismisses it and says, I don't know, it's probably not real because there's nothing in your brain. We've scanned your brain, there's nothing there, so can't be real. Just ignore it or whatever. But Stamets is actually really understanding and he says, just enjoy it. I can't explain it. You can't explain it, but it sounds like it's doing you good. Just go with it.
Yeah, I mean, what if Stamets had been the one to suggest the brain scan?
Yeah.
That, to me, is the way that should have went. If Stamets was dismissive of it, it would have been like, what's wrong with you? You've not been the same since you came back. We better give you a brain scan. Yeah. Meanwhile, Kerber's like, no, I'm on a spiritual journey, man. It's all fine and all peace and love and stuff. Stamets would be like, no, I'm putting you in a brain scan machine because there's something wrong with you. And then for him to turn around and go, oh, actually, brain scan says you're absolutely fine. Maybe you are on a spiritual journey. But instead, Culber's like, put me in the machine, there's something wrong.
None of the Deep Space Nine characters identified any issues after being inhabited by Dax's previous hosts. You didn't have Sisko with the urge to kill any more than usual afterwards, for example.
Yeah, no more than his usual. I don't know, a Deep Space Nine, were they all already broken people by a war at that point? I'm trying to think where in the timeline it happened.
No, it was towards the end of season 3. It was the penultimate episode of season 3, actually. It's quite a good episode.
All right, so they weren't quite war-torn yet. So, okay, maybe they weren't broken humans yet.
Also, it's just episodic, so you can be possessed by a dead Trill for an episode and no one will care. It's fine, we'll just move on. It's not the weirdest thing that's happened to Chief O'Brien. He's just happy he got his body back. He's happy to move on. But you had, for example, the host that inhabited O'Brien, he was biting his nails, so you could have had O'Brien develop a habit of biting his nails after that or something, just as a lingering after effect of that experience, because it would make sense that something would linger after it, especially if you're aware of everything that was going on while you were being possessed. I actually quite liked the Janal episode for the most part. Well, I really liked the way that Wilson Cruz played Janal as being very different from Culber. I just want to go for a long walk. It's like, we're kind of on a clock here and you beat these two criminals to the next clue. It's like, nah, we're going to take a nice little stroll across whatever. I don't remember coordinates. I just know where it is. Let's just have a saunter across. It's fine. We've got all the time in the universe. Plus, I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm wanting to feel the sunlight while I can here, folks. Just give me this, will you?
I didn't want to inhabit this body if you ask me one question and then me go back. I want more than 5 minutes out of this, thanks.
I agree with you, though. I think it was played very well as a different character.
Yeah. In terms of the spiritual thing, him talking to the hologram of his grandmother was quite interesting. The idea of how this technology scans your brain. It's basically the same thing that was in Captain America's Civil War. This technology that scans your brain, projects a hologram and lets you work through your trauma. It's the idea of his grandmother appears exactly as he remembers her. So you have that thing where he asks her the question, and it's like, check the program. She would have known the answer to that. But actually in your brain, she wouldn't have, because you probably remember those conversations on a subconscious level more than you remember them on a conscious level, and there'll be an awareness of how they tend to go. But it's the idea of faith can complement science. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I do think a lot of people dismiss that. A lot of people seem to think that you can't have scientists that believe in God, for example, because the whole notion of science is trying to provide answers for absolutely everything. It's the idea of understanding the universe around you. So how can you believe in this invisible deity that you pray to or whatever? And people that don't have faith find it very difficult to understand why people would have faith. I'm not a religious person at all, so I don't really understand how people can surrender themselves to that kind of belief system in the way that they do. But also I fully respect that people are able to do it. And I do understand that people can pursue science but still believe in some kind of higher power. They talk specifically about the soul in this season, the idea of someone's essence can't be quantified in any scientific way. It can't all just be the way our brains fire different synapses. It can't just be that, because it would be possible to recreate a person if you're able to create that exact brain chemistry then, wouldn't it? So who knows? And I think that's the conclusion that Culber ends up coming to. It's fine not to answer everything. We will always be looking for answers, and maybe that's just enough. So I bought into it from that perspective, but I would have liked Stamets to have actually been the dismissive one to make Culber's fears a bit more founded about that, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense why he wouldn't at least have a chat about it. Although I did like his conversation with Book, where Book said it's a weird human assumption that couples need to share everything, but you can have just something that's for you. That's fine. There's no problem with that. And they sort of transpose that into Culber and Book talking about the spiritualism stuff is something that they have as friends, but it doesn't need to involve Stamets. So I think on a personal level, it really developed Culber along interesting lines and made him think about the universe differently. So I really bought into his conclusion of, I'm okay with the fact that I will never have answers to everything, because I guess previously he'd been looking to answer everything. And even his whole spiritual journey was about trying to find a defined answer to why he feels that way. But he kind of gets freed from that by accepting that there is no answer for it. It's just a thing that's happening, and I'm always going to wonder why. So that was quite a nice merging of faith and science.
I think you summarised it nice there. I can see what you got out of it. I just didn't get the same as you. I maybe saw more of the negatives than I saw of the light. I think you're right. There was some good conversations around it. Maybe it is one of those things that just needed a bit more screen time for it to work for me.
Yeah, I think there was certainly gaps there. And like you say, there is just periodic check-ins on how's Culber feeling. And you go 2 episodes without even seeing him, so there is no real development of it. I think a lot of the problem with this season is you're on the way to the story rather than actually telling the story. And even when they solve all the clues, you have one more episode of them having to actually get to where they're going. It's like, oh, good, there's the coordinates. We need to go there. And then they go there. And it's like, oh, God, we've got to deal with the brain now. They're in the way. We have another obstruction on the way to the story. We haven't reached the story yet. It's the 10th episode. And I think that's a common thing in modern, certainly franchise media. For example, in Ahsoka, it's however many episodes of them trying to follow a map. And then like 1 episode of them being where the map takes them. It's a bit like that here. Although I do think there was a bit more substance here when they actually were going from place to place. But yeah, I think a bit more of an organic thread as a character arc for Culber would have been better if we'd maybe checked in more, as opposed to, okay, we've had 2 episodes without him, well, time to resolve this. Well, that's like that with a lot of the characters who aren't Burnham, isn't it?
That's true, but I felt it a lot more with the characters this season for some reason. I think it applied to Tilly. I think it applied to Adira. I think it applied to Suru almost. I think it applied to quite a lot of characters this season. There's always been characters that have not been given enough story time or enough development in a season, but I felt it was more this season for whatever reason. Maybe like you say, because it was shorter, there's a lot sitting on the floor that they couldn't fit in or they couldn't squeeze in. So you're kind of left with the rough bones of development in there.
Well, did you notice the vanishing bridge crew this season? Yeah, Detmer and Owo just weren't there most of the time, and they were replaced by 2 other interchangeable people that were in their seats.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's probably availability things. Saru goes missing for most of the season as well. Apparently that's because Doug Jones was off promoting Hocus Pocus 2. So wasn't in the entire season. The thing about Saru, actually, when he went away to be an ambassador, I feel like that was a development that comes a bit late, actually. I feel like that was the perfect position to send him off at the end of season 3 or something. And he actually saw a bit of the potential of what his side plot could be in 1 episode, the 1 episode after, where he's just negotiating with all these random planets. Because it gives you an idea of how the universe is working at the moment, how the galaxy works, where everybody is, what the major players are, what their worried about just this widened scope of the 32nd century. And I think if they'd stuck to that, you could have got some really interesting, okay, here's the main power bases, here's where they are, here's what the Federation's to worry about, here's what Saru's going to help negotiate, all this stuff. Because we've criticised it in previous seasons, there's been zero world building, or not zero, but near zero world building since they came to the 32nd century. It's like, okay, we're dealing with the Emerald Train, who are they? I thought they were a small group of scavengers. Turns out they're effectively a Federation-level empire of sorts. And then the next season, they're outside the galaxy, so that doesn't really count. But you haven't really got a sense of how the galaxy works. And I know they didn't do that as such in Berman era Star Trek, but I feel like you got a greater sense of who the major threats are and what the Federation has to contend with. And here's what the Cardassians are up to. Here's their problems. Here's where the Klingons are at this point. Here's what the Romulans are doing. You got a broader sense of that, but you've never gotten that in Discovery.
Yeah, I agree with you again on that. I think you're probably right. The ambassador story could have begun a lot earlier in the show and made room for someone else on Discovery to sort of step up a bit. You could have had the occasional B plots that would fill out more of what's going on in that future timeline. I have a big problem with the future timeline. I just don't care enough about it. It's just a bit too everything's resolved or nothing's resolved. You can't tell what the state is. Have we heard about the Klingons in this new? There's entire bits that are left hanging where you're like, presumably the reason that that's left hanging is because they've either not decided what they're going to do with it, or that was going to be a whole storyline somewhere. That was going to be a whole plot. And they were like, yeah, we're saving that. That's in the tank for season 7. Whatever they were planning to do. I can only guess that's the case. Otherwise, they would have them there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was just, oh yeah, we've got this whole plan of what we're going to do to bring back the Klingons and everyone will get super excited. And now it's not going to be seen, except maybe Starfleet Academy or whatnot. I think you would have got a better understanding of what was going on, and I think you would have cared more. Because like you say, a lot of things are only introduced as a blocker to the plot. So it'll be like, oh, we've got to go off and do this mission. Oh, well, you can't do that because we've got to speak to this entire High Council of people. Oh, now there's a High Council of people. Okay, they're cool.
Remember the old days, sometimes you'd see these graphics on screen and then there'd be supplementary books and stuff you could buy. I know we've talked about how we shouldn't be getting canon plots out of books.
Yeah.
Star Wars is very guilty of that. But it's the idea these materials are inspired by what came on screen and they're created by the people that also make the show. So here's a map of the galaxy, and on that map there's a big blue circle that says Federation space, there's a big red circle that says Klingon space, a green one that says Romulan space, and so on. You get no real sense of that in the 32nd century. You have no affiliation map, I suppose, or empire map, just to see where everybody is and who the major players are at this point in time. Because suddenly this season, the Brain, kind of a big deal apparently again. Okay, why weren't they mentioned before this season then? Because we just came up with it and it doesn't matter.
We didn't think we needed them in the previous season. If we'd known, we would have teased.
Yeah, the Emerald Chain, they were a problem. But until the final episode or the final episodes, I had no idea that they were an actual government.
Yeah.
In Deep Space Nine, you had the Orion Syndicate, and basically they were an underground criminal organisation that were operating out of various planets. It was known that they existed, but they were very under the radar. And that's what I thought the Emerald Chain were, until suddenly they weren't.
It had an entire governance structure.
Yeah. Even Emerald Chain sounds a bit like it's a criminal organisation, doesn't it? Mm. So again, there's that connotation. So did I want to see that galaxy map with coloured circles on it showing me where all the power bases were? Yes, I did, actually. That's what I loved about Star Trek before, is I could look at this universe and feel like it was developed out and living and breathing in ways that other fictional universes weren't.
We love a bit of space politics. I think one of the reasons you don't get the old Star map of here's the different empires, here's the different powers, is because of Discovery's ability to just bloop wherever it wants. You don't get that moment of, oh, we've got to sneak across the border. We're already over the border, we've got the thing and we've left. We're done. There's none of this, oh, we've got to go into the neutral zone and hide, or we've got to mask ourselves behind this nebula, and there's a way through their sensor net, but it's only if we go through this really dangerous part of space that could explode. You don't get that with Discovery, because it's like, yeah, how are we going to get there? Oh, well, Discovery will just do its thing and it'll be there and we're done. Sorted.
But it could be we can't even jump in there because that's in someone else's territory and we're not allowed in there.
Oh, they would do it anyway.
Well, that's not very Federation, is it?
Do it anyway. They'll just go for it. Be like, oh, we won't be found. It'll all be all right. And then it all goes wrong.
Kovic said it was okay. Red Directive explains everything.
Yeah. It's a red directive, that's why. It's a bit of hand wavy normally, isn't it? Oh, there's interference in the spore drive. Spore. Ugh. Reasons. We had a reason this season. Oh yeah, we're targeted slightly off, so we kind of crashed not that far away, but far enough away that we could get there at the same time as everyone else.
Yeah, we were damaged and it knackered our navigation. And I was just thinking, isn't your navigation Stamets? Doesn't he tell the ship where to go? He's fine, isn't he?
Damaged the navigation and Stamets is lying there on the floor. We missed.
He's had a bump on the head and he can't look at the map now. It's all blurry.
We're having to do a loop of shame and turn back round because we went too far.
Again, that's part of the world building problem, though. We just don't know how anything works, where anybody is, why anything happens, and they don't really seem to care about setting rules for themselves that they stick to, such as ploughing 2 starships into a planet to stop an avalanche, which is a sequence that I really hated. Because it used to be that you'd have a working knowledge of the limitations of the technology, wouldn't you? You'd have an idea of, okay, we can't transport in here. And they're still doing it, by the way. We can't transport in here because of blah, blah interference. So apparently we haven't overcome that in 1,000 years. You had Book and Burnham standing underneath a rock and we can't detect them. You're going to have to step out from underneath the rock. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to beam you back. Okay. But you would buy into that sort of stuff. The transporter won't work because of this. Okay. Or it has a distance limitation. We can't beam any further than this. You have to be in transporter range. Fine. And then you used to have the idea of warp drive is only so fast, so it's going to take us a while to get places, but now we have a spore drive and can go anywhere instantly, and that's kind of dramatically boring, and that's when you have to come up with stupid reasons like, we're going to significantly damage the ship so the spore drive doesn't work properly. So that we jump close enough to where we need to be, and then we have to repair, and then we have to go.
Yeah, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner where it's like, oh, hang on, Discovery's going to get there significantly quicker than everyone else.
Yeah, and also Starfleet have decided to develop this other, much slower propulsion technology. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Starfleet got a Starfleet.
I guess they're still afraid of genetic engineering, aren't they? Because you have to genetically modify a pilot in order to be able to do it. Or I guess get any telepath, because Book can do it. Book who can also mind meld with a library card. Remember when he did that? That was funny. This Betazoid library card, do you think you could mind meld with it? What? You want me to read the feelings of the library card?
The library card says you've got an overdue book. The library card is upset with you.
That book was checked out 1,000 years ago.
I feel the library card is tired of waiting.
Imagine the fee on that, 1,000-year-old library fine. That would be insane.
Brilliant.
But I think Culber and Book's friendship was one of the revelations of the season, actually, because I don't think we've ever really put those characters together in that way prior to this. And I think they worked really well together, just as mates. You don't often see a good friendship in a lot of modern TV, actually. I don't think we've really had it in Discovery. Burnham and Tilly, they're good friends, I guess. We've had that.
Burnham and Tilly's probably the closest that you've got to that. You get odd moments with the other bridge crew, I guess. When they show their trendy bar and stuff, you'll have a few of them chatting and little bits of friendship through that. But yeah, you don't get a closeness. And I thought Culber and Book was kind of a good addition to the fact that he'd been going through the whole therapy thing in the previous season and those sort of conversations. Yeah, you can believe that this relationship has developed off screen a little bit. So yeah, I was fine with that.
Let's talk about Saru then. He's gone for most of the season, but he goes into the ambassador role, which I think was long overdue. And him getting married, I've always liked the mature Saru-Tarina relationship. It's very sedate and understated, but it's also very well written, I think. The practical conversation they have about Tarina doesn't want Saru to think about her when it comes to this job offer that he's had. And then he comes around to thinking, well, I can't not consider you because of our relationship and let's get engaged and stuff. I like the logical progression of that relationship. And I think we've got it before, but I think with Tarina, we got a bit more of the Vulcan, but with a bit of Romulan mixed in, as in she keeps her feelings close to her chest, but she's not shy about expressing them as well. I quite like that. That's a nice little distinction from the Vulcans of old. And it's what we needed, really, from the Navarre, as they are now known.
I think they played it well. I'm with you. Understated is the right way of going with it, isn't it? It wasn't overplayed whirlwind romance kind of thing, but likewise, it wasn't so deep down that you don't really notice or care. Both of them are very gentle in their approach to it. I liked the bits of play between I'm trying to make sure that you're not in harm's way, but also not getting in your way of stopping you progressing. It was very subtle the way some of it was done, and it just felt like a very naturally forming relationship. It didn't feel ridiculously forced in your face. I think they played it very well. they got across everything. Like you say, the emotions, because of the characters, it wasn't overt the whole time. It would be very weird if it was. So yeah, I just thought it was very naturally played. The marriage proposal stuff I thought was very nice. I did feel cheated, because we're talking about the relationship. I'm kind of jumping to an ending here, but I'll touch on it. I kind of felt cheated out of the wedding.
Because it wasn't about them. It was about everybody else, wasn't it?
It was the conclusion to this relationship, and you kind of get a little bit of them to the side. The camera just pans away. Oh yeah, Burnham and Book are now going off to chat on the beach. What? That's what we're getting? You're done with it now?
I think before the epilogue, you have a sort of drive-by tick box of all the lingering threads that they want to deal with. Okay, Saru and Tarina are married. Next, okay, Tilly's anxious about her teaching ability. She's come up with the fact that Starfleet Academy should now have a mentorship program. What a maverick idea that is.
No kidding.
Apparently they didn't have one already. That's a bit troubling for Starfleet Academy, but okay, she's going to do that. Adira, I don't know. Confident now, likes being on the bridge. Fine. Move on. Next. Book and Burnham. Relationship is back on. Next. It felt a bit like that.
Ding. I agree with you. It was kind of used as a flyby of everyone else. I'm curious if they reshot a lot of that, or if it was just that they edited it in such a way that it could be used as a big button for everything else that was there.
It's maybe they had more of it and then cut some of it. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm thinking it was maybe cut, and then they did a lot in the rest of that post. But yeah, that was the only thing I would say about the relationship from that point of view. I think they played most of it absolutely fine. I just felt a little bit cheated that in the end, this bigger moment was kind of stolen a little bit because of the end of the season. Okay, it's probably the right decision, but I still feel cheated out of it.
Yeah. But there was plenty about it I liked throughout the season. For example, when they have a disagreement when Tarina's second, or whoever he was, Devan, or whatever his name was, puts ideas in Suru's head that he doesn't really believe in, and then they have a disagreement, and then they just have a mature discussion later in the episode where they resolve that disagreement. Obviously, we're used to the CW approach to relationships where they have a blazing row, and then 6 episodes later they reconcile in some way. It wasn't that. It was an adult disagreement that resulted in them having to take space from each other for a bit, and then they came together again and resolved it. And then later on you had the whole, I'm going to volunteer for a dangerous mission. And she's like, I understand why you're volunteering for this dangerous mission, but I feel worried about the fact that you're doing that. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm doing it. And she's like, yeah, cool. That's not the dialogue that was in the episode. I don't think the Navarre have become quite that casual yet. Maybe in another 1,000 years, once they become more Gen Z, who knows. But I like that. The practical considerations of their occupation and how that is going to impact their relationship. But as long as they're upfront about it, as long as they make sure they have conversations about all of their anxieties, all of the issues that they're coming up against, then it will be fine. Because they're adults and they can figure it out. I feel starved for that kind of relationship writing in television. Maybe I'm just watching the wrong programs.
Maybe
I am, yeah.
You get all your relationship advice from CW programs.
That explains a lot, doesn't it? It really does. I'm always trying to manufacture drama with people. What I do is I just don't tell people things selectively.
Yeah, keep it a secret.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily keep something a secret until it becomes so bad that any reaction to the secret is now completely out of proportion to if you had just told the truth in the first place.
But I'm going to keep a secret that will definitely come out. There's no way it won't.
Yeah.
And then I'll keep doing it because I'll never learn. That's how relationships work, isn't it?
Must happen at least twice per season.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it is. And also, Saru on that dangerous mission where he negotiated with Tahal, the other Breen Primarch, was excellent. I thought Doug Jones was incredible in that scene. And the fact he's acting against nothing as well, you have to bear in mind.
Yeah, that's very true. Acting against the holographic head.
And being intimidating to nothing.
And being intimidating to nothing. I like the turn of reminding everyone that as much as he's very docile in the way he comes across, that his species were actually predators.
They were prey originally and then
became predators, but you know what I mean. It was just I've been studying you and I am absolutely going to take you to task if this all goes. And he gets 90% of what he wanted there. The big ship turns away and they send a dopey little scout vessel. By the end of it, he gets a bit of that.
They've kept a cloaked scout vessel that we can see, so the cloaking device is not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
I mean, you don't tell them that, do you? You're like, oh yeah, I totally can't see you.
Also, we're in a tiny shuttle and they'll just blow us up. Also, like that Suru's negotiation tactics was a nice little bit of continuity because it follows on from Rayner's advice in an earlier episode. You have to approach the Breen strongly or they won't respond to you at all. So Saru just goes in swinging. He immediately starts threatening.
He didn't, though, because the initial offer was the nice Federation-y offer, wasn't it? We'll establish a trade route to your place and I'm turning up here with no missiles. That was the first approach. Once he gets told no, then he does.
And that was a bluff, though, wasn't it? That was just to get the information to find out where her forces were.
Yeah, then it's the now I'm swinging. I agree with you. He did go there. He got his action moment. Action Suru.
Action Saru, a nickname that he's always had.
Yeah, that's what they've always called him on the bridge, old Action Suru. I thought that was good. I enjoyed a bit of the conversation in the shuttle as well. You get that line about not face him at poker or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Or some Ferengi variation game, wasn't it?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been the Ferengi one. I enjoyed that. I thought it was good. I was glad he was there doing something to help the crew. The idea of, yeah, of course he was going to go on this because it's helping Discovery, isn't it? It wasn't going to be anyone else that was going to go on that. So yeah, it worked. And having them there in the battle at the end, you see them taking at least a couple of pot shots as they go past. You're like, well, it's a bit of effort at least.
Very disappointing visualization of this much talked about pathway drive, though, isn't it? It's a little bit faster than warp drive, apparently. Great. I don't know why I should get excited about it. Could we have had even a different visual effect? I suppose it was slightly different.
Yeah, warp with a tint, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's another thing I've never bought into about the 32nd century. They're still using warp drive. We saw alternatives in Voyager. In fact, they even used one of them in the early part of season 3. Book's ship was set up to do a couple of different propulsion methods, so they were using slipstream, which is way faster than warp drive. So it feels like that's the route the Federation should have went down. No, they're still using warp drive 1,000 years later.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Oh, no, they're using pathway drives, whatever the hell they are. Maybe they'll tell us in Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, maybe, but they all get their propulsion lessons when we watch a 1 hour lecture from the Academy. That's what this show's going to be.
I'd be all for that, by the way.
Canonical lectures to make every Star Trek fan's dream.
Your teacher this week will be the holographic Chief O'Brien. He's going to teach you about engineering.
Yes, we'd watch.
For your medical seminar, here's the doctor. He's still alive. He's still around.
He's still alive. He's still cranky. Here he is. And he's definitely still going to do opera.
We've had to install a number of extra hard drives into wherever his program's running from because he's taking up a lot of space at this point. He wears 6 mobile emitters.
He's got all the mobile emitters, just in case.
His data footprint is insanely large after 1,000 years.
Yeah, he now does opera and rap.
Yeah, keeping it down with the kids. We're not going to get that in Starfleet Academy, though, but that's another conversation for another time. Saru going off the ship allowed us to get a new first officer in Commander, used to be Captain Rayner, played by Callum Keith Rennie, who was in Battlestar Galactica. That was a good addition to the cast, I thought, and the whole Captain down to Commander thing, I found that to be a bit underwritten because you see him in command of his own ship in the first episode, and then he gets court-martialed effectively. And then he loses his command, but he doesn't really talk about it. This was your ship for a long time. Your crew, presumably you knew them. He doesn't really seem to care about the fact that he's been separated from this group of people that he's been in charge of for a long time. It was a very strange development. Couldn't they just brought him on as a commander? It's kind of splitting hairs, but you never see the inside of his ship. In fact, have we ever seen the inside of a 32nd century ship?
No, I don't think we have. The shuttles is probably the closest that we've got to a proper one, isn't it?
Is that what the bridges look like? They're just a big expansive space of nothing.
Yeah, because whenever anyone speaks to Discovery or whatnot, they're either there as the holographic telepresence thing, or they just bloop over and transport over, don't they? So you don't really see inside other people's ships. I mean, you barely see inside the enemy ships a lot of the time. Maybe he could have come across in different means. I don't think they did a lot with the demotion and the being a subordinate. Again, arc, he didn't get a lot to develop. It was kind of like, oh, you're going to be my first officer, so meet my crew. You're still in a command position, obviously, so you've not been totally demoted. So he still had a lot of authority in there. You didn't really feel that he was reeling from the demotion.
No.
And there wasn't a lot of butting of heads. Now, I don't know if I would then be arguing the opposite on this podcast. If they had every other episode, he's butting heads with the captain and being like, well, I wouldn't do it this way, I wouldn't do it this way, I wouldn't do it this way. If I'd then be going, oh, God, that's so usual, so typical, that every time they get a new person, they're going to be like, oh, that's not the way I would have done it. But I'm here to complain. Yeah, I thought there wasn't really enough of a disagreement. It toned down very quickly after the first couple of episodes. It was sort of like back into the background again. He was just in with the rest of the crew.
What you're describing there would have gotten tedious, yes, but they could have just had him have a different style that the crew weren't used to and struggled to adapt to. I'm thinking of, say, Chain of Command, the TNG two-parter where you get Captain Jellicoe show up. He's not a bad captain, he's just a different captain. And obviously the crew of the Enterprise D have been pretty secure under Picard for 5 years at that point, and they're used to the way things run. They know how things work on the ship and stuff like that. And then a new captain comes in and just turns everything on its head, and they don't like that. But it's not that it's bad, it's just that he's kicked them in their complacency a bit. I wanted that from Rayner more. What we really needed was, we needed Burnham to be off doing one thing, and then he takes Discovery to do something else. And the crew have to deal with him as their commander for that period without Burnham there, and they just have to listen to him and they have to follow his orders. And you can have this, I don't know why he's telling us to do this, or I don't like the way he tells us to do stuff. We're not used to that. I think they could have done more with that, but like you said, I think they sand off his edges a bit too quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. By the end, you're getting to see him in battle a bit by the tail end of the season.
In the final episode at last.
Yeah, exactly, in the final episode. And don't get me wrong, there probably was intention to build more on that going into another season.
Yeah.
This wasn't written as, oh, this is going to be the last time we see this character. Presumably, it was going to be carried on in some way going into the next season. Yeah, I think you could have had him not butting heads with the crew, but a bit of upsetting the system, changing positions that certain people are on, or messing around with Stamets a bit, who likes the system the exact way that it's always been. That, I think, would have worked even. As the first officer, he's in command of who's on shift at what time. If he starts messing around with who's on deck at certain times and stuff, you could have got a few complaints or grumbles or bits on the side that I think would have worked and introduced a bit there. And you're probably right, it would have been good to see him have a full-blown mission of his own. Like, we've got to drop Burnham off here, but we're also needed elsewhere, so we're going to have to jump the ship to this other system to assist with another problem that Starfleet have given us to do. And that would have given you more time. But instead, for a lot of the episodes, he's essentially standing on the bridge waiting for Burnham to radio in.
Yeah, that's it. He's hanging around, offering remote support in some cases.
Yeah, he's getting information off of Tilly, Stamets, Adira, and then relaying it back to the ground, and that's pretty much it. He doesn't get a ton to do. I did like the character, though. That's the thing. I was like, I'm feeling a little bit cheated out of what we might have got in a future season, because they've done a bit of work introducing, and then they get to play around a bit like they do in Discovery. So I would have liked to have got more. I understand because of what this season became. I have the feeling that they probably went in and chopped some stuff and did some edits and bits because, oh, well, there's no point in doing this bit this season because it's not going to make any sense in the future, so we might include this other scene instead, this longer cut of this other scene, because setting up this with him just isn't worth it now.
Yeah, but they could have used the time that they had with him better.
Yeah.
I liked in the first episode where he was on Discovery, where he was working on trying to track down Maul and Locke, and Tilly wanders in and says, I think you should spend some time with the crew. And he's like, well, I'm your boss, so I don't think we should do that. And then he starts setting up 5-minute meetings with everybody. And in those scenes, you learn more about some of them than you've learned in 5 years. One of it is that Reese likes the Constitution class ship. Okay, well, who doesn't?
But then that plays in later. At the time, you're like, this is the most useless piece of information. And then it's when they do the time travel, the time skip jump episode, he's like, oh, but I know you so well because you like the Constitution class. Oh, for God's sake.
I feel like you could have guessed that. You're in the 23rd century already. You could guess that. You could say, you like a Constitution class ship. Well, yeah, I do. It's nice.
Yeah, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting this one right.
It's funny, you learn one thing about Reese and they use it.
Yeah, and it's instantly used. I found that good. You've got 5 minutes. Let me hear one thing about you. Yeah, finally we get to learn about these people.
And then at the end, he has analysed them. He says, well, here's what I've learned about this person based on my 5-minute conversation with them. And he comes up with some really insightful stuff about, I think that Reese would make a great captain someday because of this, and so on and so on and so on. And Tilly says, analysing them isn't the same as getting to know them. And I was just thinking, what the hell do you want from this guy? He has spoken to the crew, he's learned things about them, and he's figured out their future career prospects in a 5-minute conversation. It's like, yeah, but you didn't say good job or anything like that. You didn't connect with them on a personal level in those 5 minutes. Does he have to?
Didn't play a round of golf with them or anything. Didn't buy them drinks at the bar yet.
One thing you never really get in Discovery, certainly since Lorca left. And I frequently made the comment in my reviews of the season that Rayner feels to me a bit like Lorca done the way I wanted him to be done, as in Lorca turned out to be a spy from the Mirror Universe, which I thought was a crap revelation for him. But I like the idea of he's the captain that's used to war. He's the one that you call on in these difficult situations, but he's not on Starfleet and you see him exhibiting the values as he goes. He's just a bit tougher than any other Starfleet captain. He's the kind of guy you need in times like that. I felt like Rayner was that, actually, because he talks about how he's been operating in this ship that's not that advanced, talking about still using burn tech and all that stuff. So it's the idea of he's always been against the odds, but he's still Starfleet. He's still demonstrating those values. He still adheres to them. He still upholds them. And his command style is, I keep a professional distance from my crew, which I think any leader could reasonably get there, could reasonably conclude that that's what they need to do. I don't want to be friends with the people that I have to shout at sometimes. Fine. Because you get a lot of management types that get too close to certain people and then they can't have difficult conversations. I see that at work all the time.
That's a good point.
I'm sure I've discussed it before, but could you imagine Burnham chewing out, I don't know, that's a problem. There are many main characters.
Adira, Tilly, anyone. You can't imagine her having to do a disciplinary.
No.
Or you imagine the disciplinary being along the lines of, you were right, but I've got to tell you off. And it would be one of these disciplinaries that's tinged with, I'm going to give you a rubbish duty, but just don't do it again.
You had the attempt at it when Saru was captain and had to fire Burnham from the first officer position. But even then, they were crying about it. So it wasn't really that kind of situation. But if you look at, say, Picard or Sisko, Sisko was friendlier with his crew than probably most of the captains we've seen. But he would still shout at them. He would still stamp his foot when he needed to. And they would listen. They would respect that authority. And I don't get that sense in any modern Star Trek show, really. I keep saying it, but in Strange New Worlds, I really need to see Pike yell at someone. I really need to see him be a captain and say, no, that's not the way that we're going to do this, or you have done wrong here. You need to remember your job or something. I need to see that because I don't have any sense of this hierarchy that we used to have.
Yeah, the chain of command and the discipline. My captain has given an order and I'm going to follow that order.
Yeah, instead of just saying something snarky and doing whatever you feel like, because that's what you get a lot of the time and it gets a bit infuriating. So I felt like Rayner could have been that character and he never really had the chance to do that. The episode where him and Rayner were jumping around different time periods was supposed to be his, I understand how the Discovery crew works and I'm going to conform to that ideology now. Effectively, Rayner came from a different Star Trek show. It's just a Star Trek show we never saw. He's like Worf when he appears on Deep Space Nine. He's from a different show and things work differently in that show and he has to learn how things work on this show now because he's over here now. But I would have liked to bring in a bit the sensibilities from this spin-off show we never saw. His command style, I would like that. It could be the idea that Burnham needs to have a difficult conversation with someone. She makes Rayner do it instead because she feels like she can't. And in theory, that could be a responsibility delegated to a first officer. Remember in Battlestar Galactica where Ty said, if the crew don't hate the XO, he's not doing his job.
You even get it in Voyager. You see a couple of times where Chakotay is the one that's telling off, especially when they have the Maquis Starfleet split and he chews folk out.
For a couple of episodes, yeah.
For a couple of episodes. But yeah, he does it. He does it. It counts.
It's probably because Janeway will kill you if she comes and has this conversation, where I probably won't. What do you want? Do you want me to yell at you or do you want Janeway to murder you? Choose. I don't think Rayner would be quite like that, but there could have been some of that. I did quite like to see him shooting down Stamets a bit when Stamets is rambling about technobabble and he says, quiet, I just want to know if you can do it or not. I just want a yes or no.
Yeah, yes or no.
And then he does come round to it. He just lets him ramble. It's in the same episode, actually. Towards the end, everyone's bouncing off each other. They're firing technobabble back and forth. And he's like, right, let's bring it home. Who has the idea? And I suppose that's a recognition of here's my crew's skills and here's how I get the best out of them. That's fine. That's a good leadership tactic in that way by understanding that, no, this is how these people work. They talk and they bounce back and forth. But he could have been the one to say, hang on, back on topic here. Because he does that in the second episode, doesn't he? When Tilly and Adira are not solving the problem. He gets them focused. He gets them thinking about the relevant stuff. Think about it. How long's this thing been here? They're unlikely to be using that stuff, aren't they? And yeah, you're right. Let's look at the stuff it could be.
Yeah, you're thinking too future tech about this.
Yeah. Even though you're from the past. Strange, isn't it? They've gone native.
You're from before this technology was created.
I think it predates them as well. The Promelians who are mentioned, they were in they weren't in a TNG episode. One of their derelict ships was, and they predated the Federation. By some hundreds of years. But that was the point. That seemed to be Rayner's skill at breaking down a situation and getting to the nub of it. And I don't think you got enough of him doing that. but good character. Nonetheless. And Callum Keith Rennie, always good to see. Battlestar Galactica, among other things. You see a lot of these actors who live in Canada that show up in Star Trek now. You'll recognise them from CW shows and things because they just live there, and that's where Star Trek is filmed now. So Callum Keith Rennie's one of them. Not that he was only there because he's Canadian or lives in Canada, but it'll have been part of the decision-making process, I imagine. That'll be how he was able to audition, I think. Anything else on Rayner based on what I've said?
No, I don't think so. I think I've covered everything I'd like to say about Rayner.
I did laugh in the episode where it's Burnham and Rayner jumping around different time periods of Discovery's history, which shows you how indistinct most of Discovery's been on an episodic level, because they just don't go back to any episodes that you'll recognise. They go back to the same one twice, as in they go back to the battle at the end of season 2, and then they go back to when Discovery's in the wormhole, also at the end of season 2. They go back to the same episode twice. And then they go back to when Discovery's in dry dock and some nebulous time when Lorca's in charge, but he's not there right now. So it just shows you that they haven't really done any classic episodes in the same way that other Star Trek shows have.
Yeah, they're not turning up in a room full of tribbles or anything, are they? Voyager did a very similar episode where you were jumping about different scenes and you had the big macro virus things flying about, a few different bits.
Yeah, here's the Captain Proton episode and all those.
Exactly, yeah. You had Captain Proton, you had macro viruses, you had a few other bits and pieces that they had scattered through it, and you're like, okay, you're getting bits of the history, but like you say, it was a bit, they're kind of following the Red Angel stuff, and then this one, where it kind of just parked in this one. This is quite tranquil, just nicely parked here.
Here's just after Burnham became captain.
Yeah, you could have had more guest stars maybe in that episode or something. You could have brought back a few characters that we've not seen for a bit.
I did wonder about that episode. Did it start off with high-minded ideas and then as availability just stopped happening, they just got removed and removed? Okay, are we going to get Michelle Yeoh? Nope. Are we going to get Jason Isaacs? Nope. Are we going to get this person? Nope.
Yeah, it's now been scaled back to the fact that we're just kind of jumping to a few CGI versions of everything and then we're done.
We can't even get Ensign Mount for some reason. We couldn't get Ethan Peck to show up for a scene on a day he was on Discovery. Anything like that. Couldn't put the fake beard on him again, I guess. Or the real beard? Was it his real beard? I don't know.
It was real fake. You're probably right, actually. It probably did start with, here's our wish list of what we want in this episode to sort of celebrate. And then it wound down.
It's the final season. We'll reflect on the show's past. We'll go back to such classic episodes like, I don't know, the end of season 2. Yeah, okay. Let's go there. Before the show even started.
I suppose the problem is that a lot of visually interesting story hasn't happened on board the ship, has it? That's one of the things. A lot of what Discovery's done that's been visually interesting or memorable has been on the surface or on a space station or on a different ship. It's not been on board as such. They have done bottle episodes, but they've not done as many as other Treks in the past have done.
No, and it tends to be that you get these high concept things, such as the macrovirus episode. It's set on Voyager and Janeway shooting bugs. It's an alien homage. So in Voyager, you had much more distinct stuff happening, whereas in Discovery, a lot of it's been feeding into the arcs. So you just have them talking a lot on the ship, or what's happening isn't all that memorable. When I was trying to think of what episodes could they have gone back to, the only one that kept coming to my mind was the time loop one in season 1. But then you're in a time loop, stuck in another time loop. That might have been interesting, actually.
Yeah, that might have been an interesting complication to the whole thing, wouldn't it? I think that's probably why, in a way. And like you say, it probably got scaled back when people's availability came in, when budget came in and said, yeah, we can't afford to pay that for someone for a day. Yeah. We're not paying for them to travel from X to get here just to film a quick 5-minute cameo. It's not needed.
There could have been a great scene with Lorca, though, and I'm going to do something that I almost never do here, compliment The Flash. But they had a anniversary episode where they were going back through some of the show's, I'm not going to say classic episodes, some of the show's episodes, and you had a point where Barry went to speak to Thawne because he needed his help to get back or something. And it's during season 1 when Thawne's pretending to be Harrison Wells, spoilers for season 1 of The Flash. And basically he walks in and tells Thawne he knows who he is and stuff, and then has to lie about, you succeed in getting back to the future, it's fine, don't worry about it, in order to get his help. And they could have done something similar with Lorca, the idea of, I know you're from the mirror universe, but don't worry, you make it back and you conquer the universe, well done. But we also need that thing on your desk to get out of here. That could have been something like that. The Voyager episode you referenced, Shattered, which was actually a much better episode than that, is Chakotay going through time on Voyager and revisiting various episodes. He takes a pre-season 1 version of Janeway around to kind of reflect on, look how far you've come in these 7 years that we've been on this journey home. And you could have almost done the same thing with Lorca and a season 1 version of Burnham, as in, look what you accomplished, look at everything. Because they quickly establish that there are no real stakes to this episode, because when they fix the problem, no one will remember anything. So it's not that they're interfering with the previous time periods does anything, and nobody will remember it, so it's fine. So you could have almost had that, and it would have acted as a Rayner understands what it means to be part of Discovery's family now, and he's teaching Burnham about that because that's important. And he's relaying what he understands about that. Although that's probably, he's been around for a season sort of episode, isn't it? He understands now, and then he has to teach past Burnham about it so that she'll help him. It would have been a retread of the Voyager episode, but it would also be potentially better than what we got here. Instead, we get Burnham fighting herself, and it's, oh God, I remember how angry I was at this point. And I was just thinking, was she that angry in season 1? I don't think so. I think they exaggerated that to show the progression. And then she solves the problem by saying to Ariam, I know you would sacrifice yourself if it meant saving the ship. And she's like, my God, you're right. I believe you now. Again, wouldn't any Starfleet officer potentially do that, or have to be prepared to do that?
You'd assume so.
But it's one of those sentimental things, isn't it? This is Discovery, and I know these people. And hi, Ariam, this person that got 1 episode to herself when she was about to die so that we would actually care. It was very transparent. This is her episode and she's going to die at the end of it because we haven't developed her before. She's just been there. But now she has something that we can care about when the sacrifice has to happen at the end. You'd be forgiven for forgetting about her as well. Did that conclusion work for you?
Not so much. They've always got to do these conceits in these time travel episodes, and it happens in other shows as well as Star Trek. It's the, oh, I know you honestly line. I'll tell you something weird about your family that only I know, or something about what your school days, or an embarrassing story that you once told me. And then you'll suddenly be like, oh my God, I would never tell that story to anyone. I must really trust you. I've never told anyone that I had a crush on that boy band member, or whatever the line would be.
And now you've just told everybody on the bridge. Thanks.
I've told everyone on the bridge. How dare you break my secret?
It's a good job no one will remember this once you solve this problem.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of get it as a bit of a conceit that they need to do the shorthand. Would any member of the crew sacrifice themselves to save people? Oh, you'd hope so? Kind of with you on that. The idea is that any of them could need to do a mission that involves self-sacrifice in order to save the rest of the crew and or a planet or species. It's Discovery. They've done a lot. Like I said at the beginning, they've saved the universe a couple of times now, so it's not a long shot to stand on the bridge and say, hey, I know you would sacrifice yourself.
It would actually be more meaningful if she turned to someone and says, I know you wouldn't sacrifice yourself because I saw you not do that.
I know you're right, Dick. You abandon ship as soon as we get into danger.
You were the first one in an escape pod that time.
You scumbag. You ditched us.
Oh, God. She knows I'm a coward. Yeah, I believe you now.
I know you keep stealing stuff from people's rooms.
Yeah, something like that.
You cheated on your exams.
I did enjoy in that episode where Stamets was like, there's a spore breach, you have to evacuate engineering now. And everybody runs out and he says, I'm kind of worried that my crew doesn't know that spore breach isn't a thing. Or it's the bit where he says, I'm really pissed off, you have to leave now, and they all run away. It's like, I used to be more abrasive than I am now.
That's the thing I forgot about that episode as well, just when you mentioned Stamets. Randomly, it's like, oh, and also Stamets is there.
His tardigrade DNA allows him to exist outside of time, and Rayner's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Thank God we've got a useful scientist around. The two weren't going to have a chance.
Let's meet on this deck that no one ever goes to.
I did find it such a weird device. How are we going to cripple the ship? Are we going to blow it up or do something? No, you just really confuse them by jumping them through time, and it means that they sort of pause there for a bit.
Yeah, time bug.
It's a time bug. Okay, I guess.
One of the worst infiltration things you could devise because everybody hears it or sees it. But I suppose by that point it's done its work and then that's it.
Yeah, it's done its thing. The time bug has arrived, everyone.
But potentially as a Rayner thing, it was okay. I liked his conversation with Stamets where they connected a little bit. I did buy into that. I felt like that worked. You know, where he said something like, Paul, let's show them that we old dogs still have some tricks or something like that. That was a nice little moment. With more time, I guess, you could have Rayner slowly connect with the crew like that. Just find little ways in or slowly change his approach to keeping his distance. Picard didn't start really mixing with the crew's friends until the very end of the last episode of TNG when he finally goes in for the poker game. Before that point, he had kept a professional distance.
Apart from Crusher, who he was totally banging.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, like you say, he kept that distance, and then you don't get him breaking down those boundaries until all that. I think we would have potentially got more of that. Like I say, I think there were probably bolder plans for what would happen in a future season. But yeah, we've kind of been cheated out that a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I did laugh about was in the 9th episode where Raynor's in command and he's not sitting in the chair and everybody comments, well, Tilly starts with, you notice he's not sitting in the chair, it's making everybody nervous. Oh yeah, that well-known issue that we've had all season of Raynor not sitting in the captain's chair. It's a problem now.
My thought of that was, is that something that they thought everyone was going to notice? You know how sometimes we say, hey, no need to signal boost anything, we're smart people, we'll figure this out. And is this one of those ones where, oh, everyone will be like, oh, he's not sat down in the chair yet, wonder what's wrong? And then we're like, yeah, we've completely ignored this.
In order for us to notice it, he'd have to be doing more than waiting for Burnham to come back.
Yeah, he's just kind of casually standing on the bridge, and you're like, he just casually stands on the bridge. As far as we know, he's sitting the rest of the time we don't see him.
In Whistle Speak, for example, he's at Adira's station, so that makes sense that he would be standing there, right? He's over interacting with Adira and playing with the holographic displays and things, and then in the ISS Enterprise episode, okay, maybe he doesn't sit in the chair, but also he isn't on the bridge that much.
Yeah, does he not go down to the lab?
Yeah.
And then in the other one, he's in the briefing room doing the 5-minute interviews, so I didn't really pick it up as a thing. And it just gave them a button for the episode, didn't it, where he finally sits in the chair, and it's like, oh, he's serious now.
He's now sitting down. He's now part of the crew. That's him. He's completed that arc.
He's accepted the chair. It's happening.
And then in the next episode, he's giving crazy orders and the crew are like, no problem, we'll do that. I did like the moment where he was going to give an order and he said, thanks for the trust. That was quite a nice little touch there. And when he jumps the Breen away to the galactic barrier, instead of killing them, or instead of jumping them into a black hole or somewhere.
Where do you want to send them? Into the sun.
But you could have. But I think that once again shows that Raynor lives and breathes Starfleet values. Also, it had been established that he has a bit of personal animosity against the Breen because, like every character, he gets his tragic backstory. Every character needs one. He has one. Fine. We find out about that.
Mandatory.
And it nicely connects to the story that we're already telling, so that's handy as well. Very useful. We don't know how to deal with the Breen. Well, he does, because he was enslaved by them or something when he was younger, so he knows exactly how to deal with them. Okay, that's fine. I don't know if it quite counts as growth when he sends them at the galactic barrier, because we don't know that he wouldn't have done that before, but he could have looked for revenge and he didn't.
There's a bit of resignation in his voice when he says it that I quite liked. It was like he was seriously contemplating let's just end this.
You had the cheesy dialogue of him saying, that'll give them a chance. That's more than they gave my family. You didn't need to say that. We already understood. I already understand that you are showing mercy when they showed you none. I get it.
I just kind of found it a bit, oh yeah, we've never thought of doing this with a spore drive before. We finally got a separate the saucer section moment. I was like, oh, we get to separate the saucer section. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't get to see the procedure of it being separated. It just happens.
Yeah, and there's no battle bridge, boo.
No little dinky battle bridge that's just the movie set that's gathering dust. We'll just bring that out of storage and set that up.
Just be there full of storage boxes and everything else. Dusty, full of cobwebs. No one ever uses the battle bridge.
People sitting on boxes.
That's the room that they should be playing poker in, is the battle bridge, because no one ever uses it. No one comes down here. Sorry, I'm completely distracting myself from what I'm saying. You finally get them doing that, and you're like, have they never thought of doing this before? Would there not have been a moment where they needed to transport a ship somewhere else or that, and it would be useful to do this? And I'm trying to wrap my brains and go, does this never appeal? I did sort of like the, oh yeah, you can't do that. And then they slowly work out and go, oh, actually, well, what about...
It takes the guy that's never heard of a spore drive before to figure out a new way to use it.
Was there a way of us sporing someone else?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think, would that not have been useful sometimes to like, oh, we've got to send a shuttle really far away or another starship really far away, and you could just loop it using Discovery.
Well, that's the problem with establishing the rules of how any of this works, isn't it? It never occurred to me that they couldn't jump another ship using the spore drive. I always assumed that, just say if a ship was docked with Discovery or something like that, would it not just come with them?
Yeah, almost expanding the warp bubble around it kind of chat that we've had before. I mean, the good thing is, they've done this in the final episode of the final season, so therefore it doesn't matter now. We could do this, because if it's something that they had introduced now and then had another 2 or 3 seasons to go, there'd be a lot of, hey, why not?
It would become the ram into a ship with hyperdrive thing from Star Wars, wouldn't it? Why aren't we doing this all the time?
Yeah, why are we not doing this on a regular basis? Why are we taking Discovery when actually we could park Discovery at Federation HQ and dispatch ships whenever we please to wherever we please in rapid fashion?
I suppose they would have to come back, wouldn't they?
They would need to come back, but you're probably looking for them to get there quickly rather than get back quickly.
Yeah. Or Discovery will come and pick you up in a week.
Yeah, because Slot and Discovery will pick you up. I found that a bit for me then. I was like, oh, do you know what? It's the final episode. I'll let them have it. You can take it. It's fine.
I was okay with it. I think the emotional beat of it actually worked because of, like I said, Rayner showing the Breen mercy when he easily couldn't have. It was a good resolution for Rayner on that. I do think we were missing him having a direct confrontation with Tahal, though, because he does have a personal history with her, as he previously mentioned.
But would we not have got that in a future season, though?
Well, I don't know. She's stranded decades away.
No, that wasn't her ship that got blooped, was it?
If you assume she was on the scout ship, then she would have went with them.
Would she have went on the... See, I didn't think she would have been on the scout ship. I thought the scout ship would have just been her minions to report back on what was going on, and then the dreadnought got taken out so that they couldn't report back on what was going on.
They don't really tell you.
And that was my assumption, is that she was still about to cause mayhem later. I'll be back. Shakes fist at video screen.
I'll get you next time, Gadget.
You'll rue the day. Disappear off. I'll figure out what you were up to. The thing is, they do that for like, oh, they can't know about the weapon. And then they throw the weapon into the black hole anyway. They just fling it. And they go, yeah, well, she wasn't going to get the weapon, was she? But I guess at that point, they didn't know that that's what Burnham's solution was going to be.
Yeah. One thing that really infuriated me about that whole action sequence was how long it took them to come up with a plan of let's blow up the plasma string that we've already mentioned.
Chekhov's plasma clouds.
We have a convenient thing that will blow up nearby. We already know where this is going. Why are you taking so long to get us there?
Yeah, as a Star Trek aficionado, you're sitting there going, so when's that blowing up then? When's someone going to fire a phaser at it and it's going to go bang? We've got no way of handling all these ships all at once.
And we have a convenient explosive nearby.
Waiting for it. Any second now, someone's going to suggest blowing this thing up. I thought that's how they were going to take out the entire dreadnought as well. I thought the whole thing was going to go up in that.
No. Rayner was only okay with killing some Breen, not all of them.
Only some of them in the little fighter.
The little fighters that were, I think, essentially just the Breen ships that we saw in Deep Space Nine, very similar to those.
All right, okay.
Design-wise, they looked quite similar. But I guess if your dreadnought's the size of a city, then your fighters would be the size of a starship. I guess that makes some kind of sense.
Once again, massive ships like that are just empty space, essentially. See, when you look at the size of that hangar, what a waste of space this is.
Yeah. And then the size of the corridors and stuff as well. It's very big. It's no reason to be.
Very wasteful.
What did you think of the Breen as villains?
Not the biggest fan. The whole idea is sinister because you're looking at the mass figures and the way they speak, and I kind of got a bit of that, but the Breen didn't know that they were after the gadget, the gizmo, the technology until very late in the day. So you weren't really facing the Breen as the villains until a lot later on. By the time you were facing the Primarch and you've got Maul and the Primarch on the ship, they just became kind of like pantomime villainy bad. It was a lot of, I don't care that I'm going to kill a lot of people. You just do what I say. And I don't care about Locke and I don't care about anyone. I'm going to destroy everything. I'm going to make no sense. I've got no idea how I got in this position of power. I should be dead already. I've just become very bad at being a villain. Why were my crew ever loyal to me in the first place? So many questions that need answered. And now I'm dead. I didn't quite get it. It didn't mean much to me that it was the Breen. So reveals of what a Breen looks like.
We'll get to that.
It didn't really push any buttons for me, unfortunately, because I don't care that much. But yeah, I just didn't think they were very threatening because they weren't the primary villains for the season, really. It was Maul and Locke that you were chasing against a lot of the time, and then the Breen were kind of in the background until they weren't. And at the point where Maul manages to just obtain a dreadnought, and you're like, how?
Yeah.
Okay, I get that the Primarch was not great, and his crew, quite rightly, not fans of him. Cool. But I don't see at that point that they're going to go, do you know who we need to follow all the commands of now? Is this lass we've just picked up.
Yeah.
Do you know what? We're kind of missing a figurehead now. We've decided she's it. I was like, this society is doomed for failure. How have they lasted this long? It seems really bad. So yeah, it didn't really click. How about you? Because you've obviously got thoughts.
There was a better written version of what you're talking about there. I do agree that the original Primarch came across as a bit of a Saturday morning cartoon villain, pantomime villain, whatever negative villain association you want to give. But the better written version of it is Maul using her ability to manage a situation and tilt the odds in her favour. So she was doing things like seeding uncertainty with the crew by pointing out, you don't really care about your cultural heritage, do you? And then they establish that it's something that's really important for Breen. And then they tell you that there are Breen artifacts in the space library, and he just wants to blow up the library. So suddenly the crew are like, but our artifacts are in there. We care about those and you don't. So that creates an in for Maul to exploit to get them to turn against him. And then the whole, I'm married to the Scion, is that what they call him? Locke.
Yeah.
I'm married to Locke, so I will provisionally take his place until we resurrect him using this technology. That's the plan. And then you get it from there. I think that makes some degree of sense, but it only works because they wrote the Primarch to be an idiot.
I think it works if you do it for longer. I think if you had Maul getting on board that ship an episode earlier, or you had another episode to go where she could seed more doubt, poison the minds of the crew against the Primarch for longer, learn more about the structure and who's who might be on her side. I totally believe she could manipulate into that situation. My problem is it happens way too quickly.
It does, yeah. That's why I was saying there's a better written version of that.
Yeah, because as much as they don't have loyalty to the Primarch, and they're probably sitting there going, do you know what, you've gone too far now, enough with you. I don't see the outcome of that being, but this person we've pretty much just met from a different species, which we're all up in arms against and shaking our fists, you can be our boss now, because that's going to stand us in good stead when another Primarch comes along and wants our ship. That's no way going to work to our disadvantage going forward. And we will now follow your orders, sacrifice ourselves by throwing ourselves into the void. Like you say, there's better ways of writing it. Also, if they had a bit more time to establish some of this, rather than it being, yeah, we need her to now have a ship and have an advantage over Discovery that she wouldn't have if she was just out there herself. If she had escaped on a shuttle or something at the end of the episode instead of going off with a Primarch, she wouldn't be any threat in the finale, because she's not going to get to the other location before Discovery does. She's not going to be able to fight people off because she's by herself. They needed her to have some sort of armed force behind her in order to be anything moving forward. So they had no other option. They either had to have her working with the Primarch or overthrow the Primarch in order to be in command of the situation. The sort of curse your inevitable betrayal line. I mean, she's very good at doing betrayal.
And there was the two things that allowed the crew to rally against him. Well, they were the same thing, really, but it was destroying the library and also reneging on that promise he made to the person that he thought he'd killed anyway. So is it still valid if the person's dead that you promised it to?
Yeah, my blood oath kind of thing.
Yeah, so the crew will think, well, this person cannot be trusted because he'll casually cast aside this sacred promise that he made. And he also wants to blow up all our whatever artifacts are in there. That's not good, so let's turn against him. But like you say, there should have been more examples of Maul being able to latch onto those things, because it seemed like that was one of her skills, her ability to read people or her ability to assess a situation, in the same way that Rhaenyra is, as in she gets to the nub of something, but she uses it to exploit to her own ends. So it would have been good to see more of that. The Breen being unmasked, hated it, really hated it. Especially the way that they did it, because I keep talking about this so many times. There are just some mysteries that we just don't need an answer to. Things that fans have been talking about for decades. So one of them is the space jockey in Alien. Did not need to find out any more than we already knew in Alien. It was a mystery that people loved talking about. In Star Trek, the Klingons not having forehead ridges in the 23rd century and then having them in the 24th century. We did not need a two-parter in Enterprise to tell us why that is. The answer was boring into the bargain. It was rubbish. We did not need an answer to that question. And in Deep Space Nine's final season, when the Breen were a significant fixture for a bit, people would occasionally wonder what they looked like under their helmets. And it was a mystery that has endured until now. And we as fans have been talking about it for decades. What do they look like under the helmets? The answer doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because what can they show us that's going to be better than the conversations we can have about it? And what does it turn out that they are under the helmets? Just aliens in makeup. They don't look especially distinct. Locke turns up and you're like, yeah, he looks like a Star Trek alien. Cool. He could be anyone. And then they had this thing about they have two faces. They have some weird liquid form, and then they have the form that Locke is. I didn't understand the explanation of that at all. I didn't follow what was meant by that.
Yeah, show me your face, show me your other face.
Yeah, so what's the significance of the two faces? And it's the idea of you show some of yourself to someone or you show all of yourself to someone. I didn't get it. I could not wrap my head around it. I don't think they explained it well at all. So they put to bed this decades-long mystery and they answered it in a way that sucked, and they added confusion into the bargain. You didn't need the Breen to be the villains of this season. It could have been any race. They did it because we know who the Breen are as Star Trek fans. And they keep doing this. They keep name-dropping things, and we don't need that to be a thing.
I mean, you've said already in this podcast, you've already got stuff floating out there like Emerald Chain or Klingons even, or whatever you could pick. And if you could create your own...
A new species? Yeah, do that.
You could pick your own fictional whatever gang that have heard about this artifact. A set of grave robbers or whatever you're wanting that just happen across this trail and find that this trail exists, and then that leads you in. I don't have a strong connection to the Breen in any way that made me go, oh wow, they're doing something with the Breen. I'm so excited.
In Deep Space Nine, they were just cool though. There was no depth to them as such. They were a late addition that turned the tide of the war for a bit because they were so powerful, and they weren't well established up to that point anyway. They'd appeared a couple of times, been mentioned a few times, and then suddenly, oh my god, look at this. They've got those energy dampening weapons. They blew up the Defiant in their first engagement. Holy crap, what's going on here? That was the shock value of them, but you never really needed anything more than that, certainly in Deep Space Nine. And at no point did I ever think, oh, I really hope they dig into the Breen's culture one day.
Yeah, I don't really have that with them. I think they could have used anything else. I don't think it particularly mattered. I don't know if it's because they wanted to do something in future seasons. You know, it's like the Vulcans and the Romulans are living happily together on a planet now that they've got of their own. We need another power to be our pseudo Romulans since we don't have that anymore. Let's create this tension border race to go against it. I mean, the Breen are one of those perfect examples of the reason they were probably written the way they were was not mystery, but the fact that they could interchange as many different extras as they wanted into the suits. That's why the Breen were probably written as the Breen were. Was, well, if you have someone talking and you have them on face and on Finway, then you've got to pay an actor X amount. Meanwhile, if you get a bunch of extras and you put them in helmets where you cannot see their face, we can absolutely wring this dry and it will be so cheap. We can use the same 4 extras 1 billion times and no one will ever know. That's why the Breen are the Breen. It's not we wanted a mystery thing that we're going to get interacting with. It was, we can do this on the cheap, guys. That's what they did. So solving the mystery, I'm with you. I don't mind as much. I don't care as much. I'm not as invested in it. But like you say, a lot of people will have had these debates over time of, I wonder what they look like under the suit. Does the face match the helmet? They've got one eye, anything like that. And to have it just be, yeah, it's just one of those other very generic Star Trek aliens under there. All right, okay. I guess that could be true.
I'm so glad I know that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers. That's all good. We're going to see the other ones take the helmets off now. No, only this one because I don't want to pay the other extras for that. Christ, Jesus. Yeah, imagine how expensive that would be.
His uncle took the helmet off to show us the liquid face. That was it.
That's about what you get. So I understand why you're annoyed. I don't have the same connection to it. For me, it was more that it just seemed a bit unnecessary to some of what was going on, but you kind of need this extra big bad, and I'm guessing it was some setup for your season 6, potentially.
At no point did I wonder what species Locke was when they introduced him either.
No.
He's just an alien and don't really care. He doesn't need to be anyone.
Yeah, we've jumped way into the future. There could be any number of different aliens introduced. In Discovery, they've done quite a good job, really, of sticking away from a lot of the canonical species. They've gone out their way almost to do, are we doing lots of Ferengi and Klingons? No, not really. They've invented a few different species out of this when they've done the seasons. You've had Trill and stuff like that. You've done bits and pieces, but they've kind of gone out their way to put different species in there, which seems weird to then go all in on the Breen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had the Orions with the Emerald Chain. You've seen familiar species here and there.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying they've not had any other species, but they've not gone whole hog into classic canon species.
No.
Even with the Discovery crew itself. They've got Linus, for example, and stuff like that, where it's a bit different. You don't get too much of that. So that's why maybe they could have gone with something different, or they could have just done it's a criminal syndicate that are a bit evil. Maybe they thought that would be retreading too much. I don't know.
Or just an alien race you've never heard of that are a major power, because that's just as believable. Maybe it could be the Kazon. In 1,000 years, they've got their act together and they're suddenly less than useless.
Yeah, they were far away from the burn.
You could add the Vidians because the phage was cured at some point. I don't know. But I'm also want to move away from this, bring in these references of things that you already know, because it just means we're caught in an infinite loop in the franchise where we're just revisiting stuff we already know. I didn't need this to be the Breen, and I don't feel like the Breen were enhanced in any way by doing this either.
Yeah, and like you said, I didn't question what species Locke was at all. It didn't even cross my mind to think, oh, I wonder where he comes from. It was just, oh, he's an alien.
Yeah, he's an alien. Maul is presumably a human. They do mention she's a human, don't they?
Yeah, very close to human at least.
Yeah. Eve Harlow, she's really good. She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was in the Apocalyptic Future half season that they did.
Ah, she's very good with apocalyptic futures. She's got her niche.
That's it, yeah. She was also in Heroes Reborn, but let's not talk about that.
Well, that's apocalyptic. Part of the niche.
Was it apocalyptic? It was just bad.
Yeah, it was just, well, yeah.
We should talk about the actual progenitor of it all. Once they find the tech and get into whatever the liminal space was, this expansive pocket dimension, I suppose, with all these laboratory environments, as Burnham theorized. I feel like they rushed through a lot of that, actually. I would have liked one episode of her just exploring this expansive dimension that she finds herself in. Because I quite like the notion of, I don't know what these things are. I suspect that they might be labs to test life forms in different environments, but I don't really know. The idea that we're not going to find all the answers just even by being here. And then even the progenitor says, we didn't come up with this tech, we found it. So who knows who created this?
I loved that as a reveal, actually. That was one of the things in this that I was so glad that they did. Yeah, I was kind of with you. That room with all the different portals into different planets, different atmospheres, I thought they used them pretty well. The fact that the gravity was different so they could leap around. It made the fight pretty dynamic, despite the fact it was taking place against essentially a big green screen. I am with you. I would have liked a little bit more of discovering what the place was about, investigating it a bit more. It seemed a bit too convenient to be like, oh, I've spent 30 minutes or so in here. I've found this way of, oh, there's a bit of a shimmer around this doorway. Oh, look, I can change where it goes. There we go. Sorted it. Solved it.
That's how observant I am. I've noticed this shadow.
I've noticed this shadow in the time that I've been pretty much doing hand-to-hand combat the entire time, but I've noticed this. I figured it out. I thought that was a little bit too convenient. Thought there maybe would have been another puzzle thing in there rather than just look for the crack in the doorway. I would have liked a bit more of a, it didn't even need to be a bit more of an explanation. It just would have been explore these environments. There was quite a few of the Breen that went through ahead of them.
Yeah.
So it would have been good for like to try and investigate, and then everyone she goes in, there's just a really cheesed off Breen.
Did you notice the continuity error? When Burnham went into the portal, she was wearing her Breen disguise, and then in the final episode, she was in her Starfleet away mission armor.
Oh, as soon as she fell through, she was in the armor.
You just pick up at the next episode, and she's in her Starfleet gear. I'm going to assume she tapped her comm badge.
Yeah, I was going to say, did it actually show her falling through and then she tapped her comm badge, or maybe she tapped her comm badge en route once they put the comm badge outfit change machine in? Yeah, okay. Christ knows. I would have liked them to explore that a little bit more. Again, the puzzle was a bit rubbish when they got to the end. They make a triangle inside the triangles out of triangles.
Although they justify it by important things often are simple. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe you should turn on two-factor authentication for your can create life technology, though.
Yeah, we're calling your landline now with a PIN number.
Check your email for a code.
Check your email for this, yeah. Was it anticlimactic in a way? No, I wasn't expecting a very magic MacGuffin in the middle. I liked the fact that they said, oh no, we weren't the ones that built this. We found it and used it because we were lonely. We were by ourselves and we thought the universe would be better with more diversity in it. So we triggered new life, diverse life across multiple planets. That's why we seeded the galaxy. It wasn't us trying to play God. It was that we thought there should be more out here than just us by ourselves.
Which is playing God.
Which is playing God, yeah. We should be more out here than just ourselves, I guess. And I kind of liked that it wasn't, oh yeah, you can do anything with this machine. It wasn't, you can bring back an individual with this box, or you could kill an individual with this box. It was, this machine is pretty much only good for one thing, which is massive galactic scale change. It's not going to be needlepoint work that you're doing there.
Well, no, they did say that they could bring back individuals, but it would be a perfect genetic duplicate of the person, but it wouldn't be the person. So again, that's the soul. We can't recreate the soul that is unique to that person. That's gone. Unless you're a Vulcan and can tap someone on the head just before you die and give them your soul. And then they can give you it back if you get resurrected.
Or you get a robot body, like at least two people that we've seen in recent Star Trek canon.
Yeah, I wonder why nobody suggested that for Locke.
Yeah, we should give him a robot body.
Let's 3D print an android body and stick him in there. Job done.
Yeah, we've got tons of these now. We've got tons of them. All over the place. Half the crew are androids now.
We've all had the immortal android upgrade. It's great.
Yeah, we're all in robot bodies. There's a plot twist.
Yeah.
I kind of liked the reveal that we didn't build all this. We found it, we used it, yes, but we didn't build it. There's someone else out there, and there's a potential that the cycle has happened multiple times.
It's very Mass Effect.
Yeah, you can go into the, we didn't create anything. Stargate does a similar thing as well about the ancients being there before everyone else, but then, oh, there's people before this, and there's people before this, and there's people before this. This whole cycle could have happened multiple times.
All this has happened before.
And it will happen again. Exactly.
Rainer's like, I'm sure I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've heard that line. That would have been good if he had dropped that, actually. That's the second podcast I've been on this week where there's referenced Battlestar Galactica.
Well, to be fair, on this one, we couldn't get away from it because Callum Keith Rennie's in the show.
Yeah, this one we couldn't escape. It was inevitable. I did like the way they did it. I almost suspected that you were going to get, oh, Burnham, you've got to stay here and learn how the Destiny machine works. Everyone else is banished away, but you must stay now, and it's now you to guard over the machine. The sort of thing that we've seen in the past with Discovery, which is Burnham, only you now could do this. This is your higher purpose, almost going along the Cisco line. You're here now.
Or like in Loki Season 2, holding the universe together.
Exactly. Loki literally holding the Marvel Cinematic Universe together. You're holding all of this now. You will make sure that this goes to good use because you are now guardian of it. And I was like, oh, is that how they're going to leave it? It's going to be Burnham's like, I've got this. This is my purpose now. I've got to go. I must away. That's how they're going to wrap up the whole thing. Burnham goes off and does this. Someone else gets Discovery. And I'm kind of glad they didn't go down that line. That would be a way of writing out Burnham if she wanted to do something else. If there'd been other seasons on the cards or something, it would have been an out point.
I guess so. Instead, they just cancelled the show, which gave everybody a lot of free time.
Instead, they gave everyone the out.
In terms of throwing the tech into the black hole, I couldn't see any other eventuality that would make any sense, even from the first episode. I was just thinking, we're already getting the Starfleet Academy spin-off, which will continue this time period. So you can't have the Federation having access to tech that can create life over here. That would be a massive status quo change, wouldn't it? It would change everything. It would change the fundamentals of reality as it is in the Star Trek universe. So right from the off, I was thinking, they're going to get there. Burnham's going to say, this is too much responsibility for anybody. I'm going to destroy it. And that's exactly what happens. So effectively, I predicted the end of the season in the first episode of the season, which you never really want to be able to do. But can you think of any other eventuality that would have made any sense?
No, only the line that I said where there's some sort of appointed guardian of the technology to make sure it never gets used. But like you say, the sheer fact that it is out there as a possibility is a bit ridiculous. I'm with you. I thought the most likely outcome was going to be that this is going to get destroyed. The only thing that can destroy it is itself. We could throw it into a black hole, but that won't destroy it. Or we'll throw it into the sun, that won't destroy it. The only way that you can get rid of this technology is by telling the technology to destroy itself, was along the lines that I thought might happen. But yeah, throwing it into a black hole will work.
Even if it doesn't destroy it, no one's going in there.
Let's just get rid of it. It kind of leads the question of, well, why did the people in the first place, the scientists that discovered it the first time round, they went, we're going to create this elaborate trail where someone's going to learn the responsibility of what to do with this technology. Why didn't they, instead of doing that, just go into the black hole you go? That's the bit where I was like, well, what was their thinking? You get a little bit of the, oh, we wanted to make sure the person that found it next was worthy.
We're not worthy, but someone else might be.
We're not worthy, but someone else might be, so we're going to construct an elaborate set of tests to go, are you worthy or not? And then when you get here, you'll destroy it, because no one should have this power. That was where I was thinking, who did they think was going to get it? What did they think the person was going to want to do with it when they got there?
In Burnham's rationale of, well, we can use this technology to create life, the implication is it can do more than that. That's just what it was used for. It might have limitless applications that you couldn't even fathom. But the idea of, we don't need to create life because the galaxy is already full of life. It's fine. Mission accomplished as far as the progenitors are concerned. So let's chuck it away. And then there's that word again. We'll have faith that the people that created it, whoever they are, could create it again if it's ever needed. And then you start thinking about, well, I wonder who created it. Was it the Q before they evolved into being Q, or that kind of stuff?
That's exactly along the lines that I was thinking. Something like the Q or something like that. Could they click their fingers and just generate another one? Pull it back out of the black hole? Like I say, I had this outside possibility that they were going to leave someone as a guardian of it to make sure that it couldn't be used or no one would be able to abuse it, which would have been almost a tragic end for someone, really, but would have been, I've found my higher purpose. You've had Culber, for example, going through his spiritual journey. Oh, I've found my purpose. My purpose is this. That kind of thing happening. But like you say, I said it about having the spore drive being able to jump ships. This is on a scale 1,000,000 times more than that, isn't it? In the back of the head for anyone writing something in the future would be, oh, there's this thing that's going to destroy a bunch of planets. Oh, well, we've got that machine in the corner that we could use to sort that situation. I bet there's a button you can push there that stops this. And just having that dangling there probably would be a problem. Even if you say, oh, it's a red directive and everyone's forgotten it exists and whatnot.
Well, one thought I had was there'll be a lot of sensor information that they gathered from it. So maybe there's enough that's been learned just by passive scans, Burnham's tricorder, for example, to create something really horrible out of it. We've had examples of that before. Well, the first episode of Strange New Worlds, for example, that alien race on that planet, they learned enough from witnessing a space battle without knowing it was a space battle to build a warp reactor and almost kill themselves. So you could get an element of that. You would probably have to either classify or delete Burnham's tricorder data.
Yeah, it would all need to be tucked away, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And there's whatever Maul knows, although she's getting recruited to the time police or whatever Kovic does. So I guess she'll be on the side of the Angels after this, so that'll be fine. The Breen, they won't be a problem for a few decades as they slowly make their way back from the Great Barrier at the edge of the galaxy.
That one ship of the Breen will not be a problem. The other Breen will still be a problem.
Yeah, but they don't know about it.
They don't know about the tech. Yeah, you're right.
It was only that faction that knew about it. So we're fine there. We got away with this, I think, in terms of keeping it quiet-ish. But it's probably one of those things that will never be mentioned again. I did like Burnham's conversation with the progenitor, though. The whole idea of Burnham says, well, I can't play with this tech. I'm flawed and I'm uncertain. And the progenitor says, no, you acknowledge your faults and you want to get better. That's what we want. And then she shows Burnham 4 billion years of history, which I could have done without. Yeah, I saw all the events that had to transpire to get me to that point, and I really understand things now. Wouldn't that blow your mind completely, seeing 4 billion years of history in a couple of seconds?
Then I had an aneurysm.
I feel like you didn't need to do that. She was already pretty certain about what she was going to do. It's fine. But it was an interesting conversation. It was very philosophical, very existential, very poetic in some ways as well. And it was a good update, I guess, of the progenitor makeup that we saw from that one TNG episode.
That's true. I was worried it was going to look the same as that. And I was like, oh, surely they can do a bit better. And they did.
Yeah, but to my mind, it was the only possible conclusion that they could have got to. We have to destroy this. I kept thinking about, you remember the TNG episode where they found the Iconian Gateway, which was these portals to anywhere in the universe sort of thing. And Picard destroyed it because the Romulans wanted it. It's a bit like that.
Yeah.
It's ultimately what's going to happen here. Because, like I say, it would fundamentally change Star Trek forever, and we just can't have that. You know, like in Into Darkness, where they have a cure for death?
Yes. The little injection of not death. Anti-death.
Can blood. That's all we need.
Can blood. Yeah.
Problem solved. Just have a vat of that on your ship. If anyone dies, there you go. Shame couldn't give that to Locke. But never mind. Wrong universe, I guess. So anything else on the progenitor tech and the decision to get rid of it and all that surrounds there?
No. I didn't have any more on the tech, apart from the fact I kind of like stylistically what they did with it. Just wish we got more of it. That's it.
You did have the ham-fisted protest from Stamets about his legacy, because that was an arc, wasn't it? Or was it?
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten that conversation, and then they sort of threw it in as, it wasn't petulance, but it was kind of like one of these lines where they sort of threw out, oh, this isn't a time to think about your legacy, Stamets. Yeah, like every episode he's been talking about what his legacy is going to be.
What are you talking about, Saru? I haven't mentioned that since the first episode.
Yeah, really, Stamets rolling about everywhere, talking about his legacy. Paul's sitting there going, I'm on a spiritual journey, and Stamets is going, I don't care about your spiritual journey, I've got a legacy to have.
I actually think Stamets' legacy is an interesting idea because he left the 23rd century and the spore drive was classified. It's just something we don't talk about anymore. So he's already dealt with the fact that history has forgotten him. So it's the idea of, then they've decided not to develop the spore drive again. So again, history's going to forget him. But then the resolution is, it's fine. You've learned something. Isn't that good enough? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. His biggest achievement, his massive achievement of making a working spore drive was erased. No one's ever going to know that you did this, buddy.
Twice.
We're deleting this. We're not letting anyone know. It's total hush secret. You're never going to be recognised in your lifetime for your brilliance because every time you manage to achieve something, we say it's a classified mission and it never sees the light of day ever again. So tough luck, my friend. You're winning no Nobel Prizes. No one will know what you've done. You kind of feel that he should probably already be over this by now. But if you were doing it in a Discovery way, and I'm surprised they didn't, Discovery's all about the found family on the starship, the friends that you meet along the way, the journey, the people together.
And he has his found child.
Exactly. Adira's there. And you've got this fantastic relationship, little family, the three of you, and you'd see the different scenes of when they're going off to do their away mission and they're both worried, and you sit there and you go, this is your legacy. You've managed to inspire these people to go off and do these things. You've managed to work with Tilly and train her and stuff. You've managed to train Adira and stuff. You've done all of this. That's the legacy bit, is what everyone that you've taught goes off and does. And I'm surprised that that wasn't the conversation, because that seems like a very Discovery conversation to happen.
Yeah.
Someone pulling aside and pointing at people chatting in the corner of the room or whatnot and going, hey, you did this for here and you sorted this there.
There's your legacy, Paul. There it is.
All of this is your legacy. All these people that are currently working on this amazing technology that you constructed and going off and doing these fantastic things, all because you did it. That's your legacy. And that seems like the Discovery way to do it. I'm not sure why they settled on, hey, now's not the time to think about writing in a science journal.
Also, what would tech that he didn't invent have to do with his legacy?
Yeah, I'm going to report on this amazing discovery of technology I didn't make and readings that I didn't collect from a place that I've not seen. And I'm totally going to be the one to get credit for this, so the rest of you, butt out, all right?
Yeah, you almost needed to have 3 or 4 characters standing in that chamber and debating what was the implications of it. I did like that it was Burnham on her own, but you could also see a good version of, there's 3 of them there, maybe her book and Stamets or something.
Yeah, you're trying to get 3 or 4 opposing views. We need to destroy it because no one can be trusted with it. We can't destroy it, we can be trusted with it, we can keep it safe option. You need actually, we should use it now and solve XYZ problem that we have.
Why don't we put it in the space library? It keeps moving. It's fine.
Yeah, we've got this space library now. Dunk it in the space library. No one will notice. No one looks at the library. No one actually goes there.
Just file it under the wrong heading and no one will ever find it.
Put it in the wrong place. Who have you got looking at it? Top men. Yeah, maybe having that kind of debate. I was sort of fine with, listen, one person can get in and use it. One person can interact. But like I said at the beginning, my thing with that was, okay, you've set all these trials, but not necessarily the person that gets to the end is the person that did the trials.
Yeah.
As proven by the fact that Maul was pretty darn close.
And she almost did it.
Almost did it. If she had done the puzzle the other way around, it would have been all right.
And only because Burnham decided to let her guard down for no reason.
Yes. Because in that slight moment, the comms were able to work, but the rest of the time the comms weren't able to work because reasons. Also, you can beam out now, so it's fine. I don't think there could have been any other outcome to it, but there's probably a little bit more they could have done, but the end point would have been the same. It was going to be destroyed, lost, whatever. It was not going to be available as a tangible thing. It was going to be either put somewhere or disappear in such a way of it'll come back if it's ever needed, or it was going to be destroyed, and they went with the destroyed option.
Yeah, or at least stuck it in a black hole. It might survive it, but we're not going to get it. It's fine. Let's talk about the flash forward then. The Epilogue. What did you think of the epilogue? What did you think of going ahead? I think it's about 30 years. Must be about 30-ish years based on the new character we meet.
Sorry, you were keeping it ominous there, and then I just stomped right in.
Yeah, well, we're in spoilers.
We're in spoilers, but yes. Epilogue. I don't know if we needed this epilogue. I thought they did some interesting things with this epilogue, and I don't know if it was actor availability or on purpose because of the Academy show. The time jump forward, and you get to see that Book and Burnham have had a happy life.
They're happy and comfortable. That was nice to see.
Happy, comfortable, on a gorgeous looking planet with amazing looking alien creature stuff.
An alien deer.
An alien deer and a very wonky picket fence. And you're like, do you know what? Cool. I'm kind of glad that you've ended in a happy way. Then you get the reveal that they've got a son, and the son is now a captain and all that. I was like, okay. And there's little dialogue drops of, and Tilly's, is it the longest serving tutor or the longest, what's Tilly's achievement?
She's the longest serving person at Starfleet Academy.
Longest service person that's ever done the Academy for reasons.
Longer than Boothby? I mean, he was the gardener, but still.
Longer than Boothby, how dare. Sacrilege. He's also in an android body tending to the garden. Presumably. It gave me a bit of the warm and fuzzies in one way of going, that ended nice for the characters. But I could get that from the fact that they jumped off at the end of the wedding, or when they decided they were done with the whole wedding thing and went off for a mission. I could fill in that gap myself. The additional addendum of sending Discovery off to be found in a short trek.
The true finale of the show, apparently.
The true finale of the show, the true way that this is supposed to end, the thing that we were all waiting to get wrapped up.
Better believe I've got thoughts on that.
I'm sure that there were a few people that were like, can't end this way, it's not canonical, it doesn't match, it doesn't work. It would have been one of these debates for the ages because they were like, no. We're not hearing this for the rest of the time. We're just putting this out there right now. Let's just close this one down, because if we keep getting asked about this at every convention for the next 30 years, we're going to lose our minds.
Did anyone really care? It's a conversation we have to have. Did anyone really care? And we should maybe get to that as part of that whole piece. But I think some of the stuff surrounding that was really good. Like you say, Book and Burnham comfortable and happy in their long life together, having a son who's about to be a captain, a chip off the old block. That's a good one. The advice that Burnham gives to him about the pips bring pressure, but they're supposed to, and your crew might become your family. No, she says your crew will become your family. But I think might become your family is a bit more accurate. Just because that happened for her doesn't mean that it'll happen for him.
Depends on your crew, doesn't it?
He might just captain a ship for a couple of years and gets put on another one a couple of years later. That can happen. It's the way it goes.
Yeah, you're the shift captain that keeps getting shuffled around the fleet because they can't quite find where you fit.
Yeah.
I like the pearls of wisdom and the stuff they've learned and the fact that the pips apply pressure considering the journey of self-discovery that she's had through the season supposedly, which is not believing in herself and having this complex around not being worthy, and then saying that's what you're going to get being in charge, that's what you're going to get being the boss. Okay, that's passing a bit of knowledge on.
And one thing I learned from Commander Rayner is you're going to have difficult conversations, so maintain some distance. Because I got too close and I couldn't yell at my friends.
I couldn't yell at my friends. Yeah, I had to be friends with everyone. It was bad. Apart from the fact that I'm now an admiral, so obviously some stuff worked.
4-star admiral, by the way.
Boss admiral.
Soon she'll be the one telling people vague orders and everybody hates her. That's what happens to admirals.
Evil admirals. Apparently in the future they've got out of the evil admiral thing from what we've seen.
Not enough Vance in this season, incidentally.
Yes, that's something I should have written down in my notes. Not enough Vance this season. What's happened to Vance?
He was there, but whatever.
Yeah, he could have been CGI'd in. He kind of popped into a couple of scenes and it was like, oh, there he is in the background, not doing anything.
Yeah, well, you had Rayner's court-martial that had Vance there, some other random admiral, and the president of the Federation.
Who sits in on all these sorts of things. They didn't have much else to do, so they were like, no, I'm off for a bit of disciplinary action. I don't get to chew off enough people. The bit I liked about the send-off, if I'm going to give the send-off credit, I've got my problems with the send-off, but the bit I'll give it credit for is it kind of had the fuzzies with the flashback when she hears Suru touching her arm and she has the sort of memory of the crew hanging out.
The Titanic scene.
Yes.
It's exactly like the end of Titanic, except Burnham isn't dead.
I didn't think of that. That's a good point. But you don't know if some of those characters are, which would be my other point. So they jump the ship, and she mentions, oh, this crew's going to take you to wherever so that this happens because reasons. But then you don't see anyone else on board. You don't hear Stamets on the comm or anything like that to do the jump. So someone or something is now controlling the jump, whatever possible now in the future.
Yeah, you'd have to assume that Stamets would be there. And when they talked about bringing people back for additional footage in order to wrap the show up, you have to assume that that's what this epilogue was. So basically you got Sonequa Martin Green, David Ajala, the actor playing their son, and the voice of Zora in there. But you couldn't have got Anthony Rapp to just record a line of dialogue saying, Stamets to bridge, we're ready to go now, Admiral.
The only reason I'm thinking they didn't do that, and I might be completely wrong with this, is to leave stuff open as options for the Academy show.
What, in case they want to kill off Stamets in Starfleet Academy?
Yeah, essentially. The more that you establish in that 30 years future estimate timeline, the more that you establish in there, the less options you've got in your show. So you show that the Federation HQ's there, you show all these different ships, the Federation's obviously still running, Starfleet's still running, all this stuff's still ticking over. You've established this for 30 years. You've established that Tilly is still on the payroll and still alive, so you've now ticked that box. Because we're a pernickety bunch. We're all recording in our head what's in there 30 years in the future. We're all sitting there so that if you try and do anything like that and try and put Tilly in a threat of danger in episode 1 of your Academy show, we're going to be like, well, she lives. So I'm wondering if the reason that something like that was done was we want to be able to put things in jeopardy. Not necessarily, oh, we're going to kill characters off, but we want there to be at least the hint that there might be a risk to someone.
Well, then bring Book with you then, because he can do it.
Yeah, Book can be the person that's going to jump Discovery and do it that way. I agree with you. That could have been the way it was done. Like you say, it's probably more likely availability when they did reshoots, or they didn't want it too cluttered. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So the decision to connect with the continuity of a short trek that a lot of people haven't seen. There's a lot of weird moving parts to this decision. The first thing is, obviously Discovery got quite an extensive refit in season 3 to conform to 32nd century standards. So they put a lot of work in to restore it to exactly its original configuration from the 23rd century. And then what they're going to do is they're going to jump the ship somewhere in deep space and just leave it there until something happens. And no one's told what that thing is or why they're doing this or what the reason for restoring the original configuration of the ship is. It's just something we're doing. I guess, well, Kovac has seen a short trek and he's really upset that this doesn't link, so he's making this happen.
Yeah, he's maintaining the canon so we don't have to.
But why restore Discovery to its original configuration? That doesn't make any sense. Also, here's the ethical problem of it. What we're doing is we're taking a sentient being in Zora and abandoning her in the middle of nowhere for 1,000 years, by the way. It's 1,000 years before someone stumbles onto Discovery.
Oh yeah, while Zora presumably feels the ship rotting away around her. Because when you had before where the computer was malfunctioning and bits of the ship were getting chewed up, I'm trying to remember the episode, everything was last season or the season before, where you could basically feel the conduits getting taken out. It was worried, it was scared, and instead you're just going to leave it for 1,000 years while it deteriorates.
Also, Zora's an AI, so you could argue, well, maybe she doesn't get lonely, maybe she doesn't perceive time in the same way we do. But we know she gets lonely because she's told us before, and that she loves the company of the crew, she loves carrying these people, she loves being around these people, having her own family, that kind of thing. So it's unconscionable that they would decide to do this. For what reason, other than we need to tie up to the short trek?
What's the line that Burnham says when she's describing what's going to happen? I'd need to watch it again to get the exact wording, but there was almost a line that made it sound like they were taking a copy of Zora with them.
I don't think that was ever implied.
That's what I couldn't quite work out. I would need to watch it back to try and get the thing, because that was the bit that I was like, well, that seems overly cruel.
Burnham says something about one day you'll come back and you'll get to see the descendants of your family. Couldn't you just stay here and see that anyway?
Yeah. Does it need to be Discovery with the AI? I'm with you. I was a bit like, And like you say, it's to fit that continuity. But did it need to happen as the finale? Did they need it to be, this is how we're going to finish this, is Discovery getting taken away to just be abandoned floating in space? It's a bit dark, isn't it?
I rewatched Calypso before coming on for this conversation, and I feel like the writer probably should have done that too, because this doesn't add up. So in Calypso, Discovery, as I said, has been in space for 1,000 years, abandoned without its crew, and Zora's there twiddling her thumbs. She doesn't have thumbs, but if she did, she'd be twiddling them. Basically, she says that the crew left and told her to maintain position. So that implies that something happened, the crew left and assumed they were coming back, and then just never did. And the assumption was that Calypso took place in the 33rd, 32nd century, something like that, if it'd been 1,000 years from season 1 of Discovery, because that was when it was made, just after season 1 of Discovery. But now it's in the 42nd century, because it's 1,000 years after this. There's mention of the Vidraish, which is a term related to the Federation, which was mentioned once in season 3 of Discovery. Someone refers to the Federation as the Vidraish. And Kraft, the guy that stumbled onto Discovery, has been at war with the Federation for 10 years at that point. So what's going on there? And there's also mention of recently taking delivery of a shuttle that might not work. So it's all suggested that Discovery was out there, business as usual, and something happened. And I'd kind of written it off in my head as this is an alternate timeline that they somehow prevented.
Yeah, that could have been a fine excuse, couldn't it?
So I was never thinking about tying up to this. And they got an idea from it to create Zora as a character who appears eventually, and that was fine. But they don't even explain why they have to do this. And as a sentient being, Zora is entitled to some sort of an explanation. And there's a better way of doing this as well as wrapping up. I like the idea of let's say goodbye to the ship, because the ship is a character of the show as well. And Zora existing made that idea literal, didn't it? The ship is literally a character now.
Personified it,
Yeah. A better way to do it was, we're putting Discovery in the Fleet Museum because it's such an important ship. And maybe you still even have restore the original configuration because we want to get nostalgic. We want to put Discovery in as she was when she was built or something like that. You can get away with that. And then you can have Zora excited about talking to all the visitors that will be coming to the Fleet Museum to see her. And then you get the ship survived, it thrived. Zora's got something to do. Was she just sitting in dry dock for decades? When did Burnham stop being in command of Discovery?
Yeah, how long? Because when Burnham walks onto the bridge, you get the feeling that the ship's been abandoned already. As much as they're restoring the original configuration, the fact that the bridge is just abandoned and switched off, it gives you an excuse to do the cool wake-up animation sort of stuff and lighting on it. But why would Discovery just be sitting there unused? Presumably, okay, yeah, you can't jump it anymore without having a navigator, but are there not any other species that are compatible? Has it just literally been 2 people that are ever possible to use it again? Seems a bit of an odd asset to be just sitting.
Can you transfer Zora to another ship? I guess if she was willing, they could. Zora wasn't in the season that much, though. She spoke occasionally, but she was mainly used as a search engine. Zora, can you find us? Yep, done it. And that was it. So she didn't really have any character beats throughout the season as such. Not in the way that she had in previous seasons. But it was such a confusing ending, and I think the unnecessary continuity tie-in ruined what was otherwise a really poignant ending for the show. I spent most of those scenes just wondering why the hell they were doing this.
Yeah. Where would you have cut it then? Would you have cut it at the original episode ending and just done check-ins with people at the wedding kind of thing and found out what they were up to? Or would you have done the 30-year jump but just not had the tie-in to Calypso? Instead, it would have been Burnham's going to take our captain's son to the Discovery B or something like that. What would you have had as the...
So I think you were always going to get the epilogue because Discovery is a very sentimental show and you want to end on a sentimental note. But I would have went with what I said earlier. Instead of taking Discovery out to the middle of nowhere, we're taking Discovery to the Fleet Museum. And there's a big ceremony. The original crew are going to be there. It's going to be amazing. Everyone's going to love it.
Yeah, and then that gives you the feels.
Yeah, and we don't see that ceremony, and we maybe don't even see the original crew. We just see Burnham, but it's the idea of she turns up, she chats to Zora for a bit and says, "Are you ready to go to the museum?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting all the people that want to come and learn about our adventures. I'm going to love just telling people stories about our adventures, including the 30 years of adventures you haven't seen." Wouldn't that be great? But that's not what happens. I also do quite like the idea of a TNG ending, as in, yeah, it's an ending, but also there will be further adventures that you just won't see. Except for the film that's out in a few months, in the case of Next Generation.
Yeah, I do like those kind of endings where, yeah, the stories, how do you put it? There's other stories that are going to happen, it's just you don't get to watch. You're not going to be there, but just assume that they get the rogue signal detected, the mission Starfleet wants us to go and check that, and just the ongoing stuff continues. Would you put it as a button after the credits or something like that? I don't know.
It had the energy of a post-credit scene, didn't it?
It did have the thing of, yeah, we just need to explain this bit now. We didn't even really cover Kovic.
Oh, we will, though.
All right, okay, well, we get there. We'll save that.
The thing with a short trek is there's going to be a sizable chunk of your audience that won't have seen that. So there'll be people watching it that'll be like, what the hell is this? Why is this happening?
We didn't get, in the UK, the short treks for a while.
No, they came out on Blu-ray eventually.
Yeah, eventually they were on Blu-ray, and I think eventually they got uploaded to the streaming services.
They went on Netflix eventually, yeah. They're on Paramount Plus as well now.
Yeah, but it didn't go out at the same time as it did in the US and a few other territories. I think we got the season before we got the short treks. I think they came out at the same time as extras when the season came out. I don't think we got them in advance.
No.
Because they were meant to be a filler almost in between the two, bridging the two seasons, weren't they? But we didn't get them until the season released as an extra on Netflix.
And some of them, their canonicity was dubious. You had the ones that were obviously canon, such as the one where Tilly meets that princess or whoever she is. And then she appears in season 2 and she already knows Tilly. And if you haven't seen the short trek, it's okay, they met at some point, that's fine.
Yeah, it's a long story kind of thing. Tilly waves it off, yeah.
Yeah, and then you had the prequel that was Saru getting taken to join Starfleet and Giorgio turns up. And then they had more abstract ones. The end of season 2 ones were a bit more abstract. You had like Spock's first day on the Enterprise, and then you had Pike testing a new cadet or something. And then you had that animated one that Michael Giacchino directed, Ephraim and Dot. And there was a Harry Mudd one as well. So most of them I think are supposed to be canon. But I think the Calypso one, it was always, this could be an interesting what if. At no point did I ever expect them to actually tell that story of how they got there. And then they did in the final episode, no less. I just written it off as a timeline that was prevented. It looks like an awful timeline anyway. Discovery's been abandoned. The crew, where are they? 1,000 years ago, they're dead now. I don't know. It's a bit strange. What a disappointing way to wrap up a show, just by needless continuity.
Yeah, could have given us the feels without doing the,
Yeah. So anything else on the flash forward?
Don't put wax in coffee.
Yeah, don't do that, apparently.
Bad idea.
It's good advice for anybody. Or vinegar, which accidentally happened to me.
Oops.
It wasn't in coffee, though. It was in tea. It's just vinegar spilled and ended up in tea. Don't do that. I didn't drink it, but I imagine it was probably not good. Anyway, that's a strange little half story about my personal life.
Little detour.
Yeah, we will get onto COVID. Don't worry about that. Let's talk about favourite or least favourite episodes. It's a short season, only 10 episodes, so we don't have a lot of things to choose from. What were your favourite episodes, if you had any? If there's any that stood out to you as ones that you actually liked?
I quite liked the one with the weather machines in it and the Prime Directive breaky. What was that episode called?
Whistle Speak.
Whistle Speak. I liked the world building that they did in that one. And yet again, another Star Trek episode where the twist is that as a result of being very faithful and doing everything properly, you are rewarded with death. This went dark. I liked that episode. I thought it was pretty well put together.
It was an episode of Star Trek, wasn't it?
Exactly. It could have been a standalone of something else, essentially, couldn't it? It could have been that they were trying to get a MacGuffin out of one of the machines, or they had to reset the machines without anyone noticing, without the clue.
You could do it in Strange New Worlds with minimal changes.
Yeah, you could do it in Strange New Worlds without them trying to find a clue at the end. It is simply that they've decided that they want to fix these machines so that people on the planet don't die. They're trying to bend the rules to do it.
Also, it may be more appropriate for Strange New Worlds to do it, since it's a strange new world.
I love the whole idea of people whistling as communication, like a song. When they first switch on the speakers to hear what the noise is down there, and they go, oh, actually, it's people speaking. And you hear both sides of it before the translator kicks in. It was just very neat. I liked what they did in that episode.
I loved it as a Prime Directive story as well. I've talked about this plenty of times as well. The idea of the Prime Directive is seen as a bit of a religious doctrine, weirdly, in Star Trek sometimes, as in this can't be broken, rather than the whole case by case. It's a rule that we'd like to follow, but it doesn't always work because it's a rule and it hasn't been thought about in all scenarios, such as this one. And then it's taken seriously. Burnham consciously decides to breach the Prime Directive. And Rayner reminds her of that. And she says, yeah, okay, we'll deal the consequences of that, but I'm not letting this happen in the way that it's going to happen if we don't. And then there are no consequences. It never gets brought up again. Burnham doesn't have to go to her court-martial that the president of the Federation will attend. Funnily enough, that doesn't happen. But I really liked the whole idea of, okay, I've decided that the Prime Directive will not apply in this scenario. The best way to do it is this. And then that conversation she has with the guy afterwards as well, when he's just found out that aliens exist. And he's thinking about his religion. Is it wrong? Have I been wrong to believe in this all this time? And she says, well, no, I'm not telling you that your faith is wrong. I'm just telling you that there's also us out there. It doesn't devalue your belief system in that way, at least. So I like that. That was, again, a great Prime Directive exploration. It's probably one of the better Prime Directive explorations we've had in Star Trek, actually. A lot of them aren't very good, though.
I liked it as an episode. That's probably my favourite one.
Yeah, same. I quite liked the episode after that with the Breen negotiations, if you can call them that. It was okay. And they did that Star Trek Discovery thing of filtering a political situation through the feelings of characters, because Discovery is about feelings more than anything else. Whereas if you'd seen it Next Generation, it would have been about the tension of the negotiations between the Breen and Picard or whoever. But in that, it was filtered through the Maul and Locke relationship, because that's just the way Discovery is. So I liked that one. I liked the head trip one as well, at least some of it. I was more in tune with the second half of the episode when Burnham actually started doing the test as she was supposed to, rather than flitting about trying to figure it out.
It was good as a character exploration. I liked the setting, the library thing. I thought it was quite a neat concept to drop into the universe. There's this neutral space where if a species wants to protect its culture, there's this neutral space that all parties respect, or all parties are supposed to respect, where your culture is preserved. Regardless, you want to give us your poetry and it goes. You want to give us your art and it goes. We will take it and care it. I was like, that's quite a neat Star Trek concept of something that would exist. It's your seed bank of culture, for want of a better term. It's one of those grand idea sort of things. That's a very Star Trek thing to exist.
I liked David Ajala's performance as the AI or whatever it was. In my review, I referred to him as Guidebook.
That's good.
That was a hashtag waiting to happen. It's a shame I don't use social media.
That's another case where an actor was in character, but a different character. That's similar to what we got with Culber, where you've got this, okay, a book, kind of, but not.
I liked when Burnham said, why didn't the interface give me Tilly? And he says, Tilly would have been just as frustrating. That was a good one. The 9th episode with the heist, even though it was another delay on the way to the story, I quite liked that one, at least mechanically. Discovery flying into the hangar bay at the end was pretty cool from a spectacle standpoint. Really dumb, but really cool. Very little from the first half of the season. I thought the first episode was okay, other than the ploughing the ships into a planet's surface thing. I quite liked it, even though we'd seen it a couple of times because of the pre-release stuff, the warp chase thing. That was cool. It was a cool sequence.
Yeah, the warp chase, like you say, it was kind of spoiled by the teasers. It's not something that we've seen that often, is someone hanging on the outside of a ship in warp. It's not the done thing.
Although we've seen it once.
Oh, where have we seen it before?
Remember in Enterprise where Trip had to go from Columbia to Enterprise?
Oh, yeah. They did the extended bubble thing and he does that. Yes.
That's something that makes sense in the made-up physics of warp drive, because as long as you're within that warp bubble, you're as protected as the ship. So I'm okay with Burnham standing on the ship. That's fine. And then getting thrown out, I mean, that's a rapid deceleration, I guess, but whatever. That was pretty cool. My least favourite episode, I think, was the ISS Enterprise one. That was just blatant and terrible fan service. Oh, look, we've gone into this weird interphase place between universes. And look, the ISS Enterprise is there. And it was a refugee ship from the Mirror Universe, and it looks like most people got out. Why are you telling us this? There's no emotional impact to this whatsoever. It's just because you want to use the Strange New World sets to save some money.
I was about to say, we know the reason. We could rebadge these sets.
We'll stick a Terran Empire logo on the wall and then call it a day. But the thing is, it could have been any ship. They didn't make good use of it. You also had that thing where Obo and Detmer and whoever else are going to take the ISS Enterprise back somewhere, and then they're never seen again for the rest of the season. How long was it going to take for them to get where they were going? It was just terrible fan service. The episode itself wasn't that engaging, and I hate when I feel like I'm being pandered to. They think that they'll show me a Constitution class ship and call it the Enterprise and I'll love it, and I didn't. I hated it.
Yeah, like you say, it didn't need to be the Enterprise. They could have made it any ship. They didn't take advantage of that. It didn't have anything special to be the Enterprise, so you didn't get crew logs or something like that getting piped in.
Yeah, at no point did we hear Ethan Peck playing Mirror Spock or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been just any Mirror Universe ship.
Could we have a Paul Wesley Kirk cameo as Mirror Kirk?
Yeah, exactly. If you'd done any of that, it might have made it a bit more worth it. Otherwise, it's just dropping something in there so that gets people excited in the trailer shots, doesn't it? It was that kind of thing. It was like, oh, wonder what's going on here. Have they travelled back in time? Have they travelled forward in time? Has one crossed over with the other?
No, the answer's way more boring than that.
The answer is yeah.
I also didn't like the 4th episode, which was the time hopping episode, because Voyager did it better. A lot of people seem to like that one, though, but I don't understand why, because you're revisiting all these classic moments in Discovery, but it amounted to Burnham standing in the ready room telling Rayner when they are. Oh yeah, that's when that happened. Are we going to see it? Nah, just hang around in here.
Yeah, just don't leave this room.
There was a weird part in that where Rayner spoke out of line, and that was one thing I did like about it, where Rayner almost immediately admitted, yeah, I shouldn't have talked like that on the bridge. I'm sorry, I used to be a captain. I'm still adjusting. But Burnham says, let's go chat in my ready room. And then they beam there. And it's like 10 paces away.
The combadge stuff I just find frustrating. How does it know where you want to go? You've not said, take me to my ready room, and then you tap the badge or anything like that.
Reading your mind.
They tap the badge, it reads your mind, it takes you wherever you want to go and puts you in whatever outfit you want. I don't get it. It's similar to the phaser, which is also a dermal regenerator, which is also a tricorder, which is also a baton. How does it know what I want?
It's magic. It's all it is.
It's just magic. It's space magic, and I've just had to accept that the future has space magic. Once they did the whole programmable matter and the beamy combadge stuff, I was like, okay, that's fine, fair enough.
And the infinite turbo lift.
The infinite turbo lift, the big room in the middle of Discovery, the big empty warehouse space that they have where all the turbo lifts live. I've just had to grin and bear it. It's one of the reasons that I don't like that far in the future. Star Trek has always been future. It just seems like there should not be any problems, or there should be barely any problems now.
I don't think the writers have the imagination to realise that tech in the way that they should. When you look at Star Trek as it was originally conceived in the 60s, it's the idea of, wow, flip phones and whatever else, and transporters and all the other technology. But there's the technology that we just have now that we take for granted, like the tablets that you get in TNG.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Although the tablets in TNG is you need to have multiple ones for different documents.
Yeah, the different stickers that have been put on them.
Neelix walks in with a case of stuff, just been like, yeah, here's a bunch of data. What's that data? It's like 20 megabytes worth of documents. It's probably all right to just put that on one
Big pile of iPads for every document you want to read. Your suitcase full of Kindles. Need one per book. I get it. They went, right, we're going to get out of the way of so much canon, and we're going to go into this far-flung future and see what's going on there, and it gives us more free will to be able to write what we want, essentially. We can explore something new.
But they've crowbarred so much fan service in any way that they've ruined that opportunity by constantly referring back. We had a reference to Picard again this season.
Yeah. It doesn't work for me in the same way, which is why I'm not quite looking forward to the Academy show. I'm still going to give it a watch. Of course I will, because it's Star Trek, but I'm not a fan of that setting. It's a bit too future tech for me, and I just don't care enough about because we've not got that much established of what's going on there. I just don't care enough. I need to be brought in and sold it, and maybe that's something they'll be able to do on the show if it's on a different scale, but
maybe.
I'm not going to hold my breath on that one.
But beaming 10 paces away is a bit much.
It's unnecessary. It's because the conceit is that they then try and beam back, and that's when the whole thing triggers off. They could have walked into the ready room and then Stamets be, oh, I need you down in engineering, and then they could have then beamed. It seems unnecessary to just do it to get into the ready room. It's one of those ones that annoyed me through the season where folk would just randomly blip out of rooms, blip into meetings, back out again.
Are you not just constantly being startled by people in the 32nd century? You're just sitting there minding your own business and someone just appears.
Yeah, someone just comes in next to you, steals what you were about to have for lunch in the canteen.
Someone beams in front of you the queue. I was there first.
Yeah, it just seems a bit chaotic. You're also robbed then of the Star Trek tradition, the walk and talk.
Yeah.
How many scenes have we seen of the one corridor they have built on the set, and they get to walk up and down that one corridor, and now we've been robbed of ye old walk and talk because they just beam everywhere.
Or having a chat in the lift.
A chat in the turbo lift. Tell the turbo lift to pause so they can continue their conversation without being overheard. Anything like that. We've been robbed of these Star Trek tropes. What did we do to wrong you, Discovery?
The person you're trying to avoid comes onto the lift or the floor, that kind of stuff. We'll never get that now. Any other episode you wanted to call out?
No, I think we've probably covered what I want. I'm having a look at my scribbles. I think we've covered it. We're good.
Let's get on to fan service. We've talked about some of it already. I think I mentioned the inner light tech for the head trip. It was a nucleonic beam, which is the same thing that Picard was shot with in the inner light before he goes to live out a life on a planet.
Oh, okay.
As in he gets the download of that guy's memories.
That's the one where he picks up the flute and stuff.
Yeah, that one. The season plot itself is fan service because they're referencing an episode of TNG that we have seen, the ISS Enterprise, unmasking the brain. Didn't like either of those things. Something you alluded to, the Kovich reveal. We find out that Kovich isn't just some guy called Kovic, which I had always assumed and was fine with. Turns out he's someone that maybe some of us know. There's a really weird conversation where he suddenly starts talking about how he's lived many lives. I'm like, okay, I don't know why you're telling us this now. And he introduces himself as Daniels, Agent Daniels, from Enterprise, a character played by Matt Winston in Enterprise, who appeared whenever future stuff needed to be cleaned up, and Archer was the only one that could do it for some reason, which is hilarious by itself. So that's who he is. I didn't understand the point in this reveal. Also, it was so clumsily handled. You got to see his artifacts of the past, such as Geordie's visor, Sisko's baseball, bottle of Picard's wine. Why has he got those things? Of all things. And who cares? I just always assumed that Kovic was a mysterious guy that knew stuff. And I was okay with that. I didn't need anything else. And the Daniels reveal doesn't enhance him in any way. Also, like with the whole Calypso thing, there's going to be a chunkier audience that will be like, who the hell is that? I don't know who that is. And even people that have watched Enterprise might be struggling.
Yeah, if you're someone who has not watched Enterprise,
and there's a lot of people who haven't done that.
Exactly. There's a good lot of people out there. Then maybe you would just get the feels is the wrong word. You would get the satisfaction out of he's told her his actual name and it's a sign that they trust, and that's all you take away from it, is the fact that they trust each other. For people that have watched a lot of Star Trek, you would then be like, oh, you've got Sisko's baseball that you've nicked and Geordie's visor, and then they do the Daniels thing, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess. Like you say, it is just fan service, isn't it? It means nothing. It doesn't change anything apart from the fact that you now go, oh, well, this character isn't just a guy that knows stuff. It's he knows stuff because time travel, etc. But apparently he's not really doing the whole time travel malarkey anymore. He's just quite happy where he is.
Well, he maybe pops back in time to get some stationery.
Yeah, maybe. He goes back and steals stuff, doesn't he? He goes back and gets a bottle of Picard wine that everyone hates.
People are happy to give it to him. Yeah, I'm not going to drink it.
Maybe he's got the one good vintage. Maybe that's why he went back and got it. There's one vintage where it worked by accident, and that's the one that we want.
Can I have that wine? Yeah, I'm not drinking that.
Yeah, no one's drinking that. Eventually it turns to vinegar and then you can use it as a salad dressing.
He goes back in time and picks up some legal pads, because apparently that's significant. This is a real legal pad. Here's a bit of paper for you.
Yeah, he's got actual legal pad, actual paper.
You do know I'm going to throw this out the second I get back to Discovery, right?
I didn't put it together was that really the first hint? It probably wasn't the first hint of time travel, but it was a hint of, oh yeah, well, how the hell did you get this?
He already knew about time travel before anyway. He was the one that explained why Giorgio was fritzing, remember?
Yeah.
And he showed us that guy that came from the Kelvin verse as well.
It's fan servicey. Again, it didn't do anything to me. It just seemed like an unnecessary scene. It was something that just didn't need closure. Like you say, I was quite happy with the guy being a bit mysterious and knowing shit. He's the guy who has the secrets, who's been read into all the programs, he's looked into all the different stuff, he's opened the files that he's not supposed to, he's just knows things. Maybe he's done a bit of time travel, maybe he's been on all these covert ops, he knows the contacts, he knows the stuff, and Starfleet's quite happy with him being the guy that knows, so that they don't need to be read into anything. They can just go, hey, this guy handles it, let him just do his thing. I'm kind of fine with that. It didn't need to be tied into any previous canon. It just needed to be guy that knows stuff.
And he has his little white pocket dimension that they can go for a private chat.
Yeah. He's got his own little void that he likes to work in.
Yeah, there was no need to reveal that he's Daniels. There was some stuff going through my head when they were doing this scene, because you saw Geordie's visor, then the Chateau Picard wine bottle, and I was sitting there thinking, is he Picard? Is it going to be revealed that his android body's still alive? Then I started thinking, is he Data? Because obviously he might survive based on the third season of Picard, who knows? But there's no way they wouldn't get Brent Spiner back to play Data again, and that would give the game away pretty quickly, wouldn't it? If Kovic, quote unquote, had been Brent Spiner all this time.
It looked like Brent Spiner. You could have it be some sort of reveal where he's in disguise some way, some tech that's disguising him.
Yeah, holographic skin or something.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of shell. Or Kovic is being operated in the background, remote controlled or something. I don't know. They've done weirder stuff.
He's a holographic avatar of Data, something like that.
I was trying to work out some of the other stuff. The baseball, the visor, the Chateau Picard wine I got.
That's all they showed us, I think. There's other stuff in his office, but I don't know what it was.
There's other stuff further in the background. But it being Enterprise. Surely there should be an Enterprise thing there.
A water polo ball or something, yeah. A dog collar.
Yeah, something to do with the dog, or I'm trying to think what you would take of Archer. It was quite a sparse set. It wasn't as luxurious as what they've got now. But I'm trying to think of what they could have had.
It would have been his water polo ball, I guess. I mean, that was about it.
Yeah.
His remote control ship that he played with sometimes.
Something silly like that. You could even just have a model of the Enterprise or something there and put a model of the ship. Just have it as he's got one model ship and that's it. Something like that would have worked. Wouldn't have looked out of place in amongst the other stuff, would it?
Something from Voyager. I don't know. Chakotay's medicine bundle.
There was a couple of statues in the background, and I was trying to think if those were in Janeway's ready room.
No, she didn't really have anything. She had her lucky teacup, apparently.
She had her lucky teacup, yeah, the lucky teacup. But I thought there was some statues and think, man, maybe I'm being completely familiar. I've only seen it the once and picked up all the stuff on face value and was like, okay, I can pin in these three things.
Also, when he said Agent Daniels USS Enterprise, if he's referring to Archer's Enterprise, that was not the USS Enterprise.
No, so he's also visited another Enterprise.
Well, he took Archer to the Enterprise J once, but he wasn't serving on it.
Yeah, but he must have been, because he travelled back to be on Enterprise, on the original Enterprise.
He pretends to be a steward, but it's funny because his first appearance is the episode that reveals that he's a time traveller, rather than have him in the background in previous episodes so that you know who the guy is.
Yeah, at least a couple of times.
You know, like with Seska, before she betrays everybody, you've seen her a few times.
Yes, they drop her into the background, have a couple of conversations.
Yeah, she's pretty prominent up until that point, actually. She has quite a few scenes. So it was funny with the Daniels thing. The first time you meet him, he's like, oh, thanks for breakfast, Daniels. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And then later on, he's like, hi, I'm a time traveller. It was a pointless reveal. I hated it. Why are we not allowed to have mystery anymore? But even then, I didn't think Kovic was a mystery. He's a weird guy that knows stuff. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, I didn't need an answer. It wasn't one that was gnawing at the back of my head. It wasn't this unresolved issue that was going to bug me for the rest of time, who it was. Again, some of being a fan of these shows is having your own little silly fan theories that you can argue about.
Were there any fan theories about Kovic, though?
There probably was a bit of debate about, oh, why does he know this stuff, or what's his deal, or something like that. There would be little bits of debate out there.
But I'm guessing you'd be hard-pressed to come up with, maybe he's Daniels from Enterprise.
Maybe Daniels from Enterprise, why not? I'm sure there is someone out there on the internet, and if you're listening to this, hello, who has said...
Ha, nailed it.
Yeah, somewhere deep on Reddit, there's someone going... Nailed it. I told you and I was right. And it's got 2 views, and one is from when they posted it, and the second one is from when they commented, I was right.
There's a bunch of downvotes. Nobody believed them.
Yeah, there's just people that downvoted it without even reading it, just went, nope.
It was the writer of this episode. It was dumb.
It's dumb, but I'll let them have it. It's their last one. What am I going to do?
We have no choice.
I've got no choice. They've done it now. It's fine. It's presumably not going to have an impact on anything now.
Well, he might be an academy.
It could be an academy. It would be weird.
Because he was the one that pushed Tilly along the academy path. He was the one that suggested, you should be a teacher. And she was like, yeah, I'll do that.
It kind of adds an air to his meddling in previous episodes, doesn't it? Of the time travel sort of thing of, I know where these people should be and I need to give them the nudges.
Such as Zora. I've been watching short treks.
Got a mission for you, pal.
This hasn't happened yet, so please get this resolved. Thanks. The only other bit of fan service I picked up on, and it was pretty obvious, was the Soong-type android early in the season, in the first episode.
All right, yeah.
But they do explicitly point out it's a Soong-type android, and it's the same makeup that they use on Brent Spiner, and they even say its serial number, AI or AS or something. It's Alton Soong, the Soong that was in Picard season 1, that guy. Also played by Brent Spiner, because the Soong gene pool is so shallow. That's why he has to make androids, because if he reproduces, they'll have all the illnesses ever, all the genetic defects. It's so inbred. It's a weird family, the Soongs. But that was it for fan service that I picked up on. There was undoubtedly other bits and references here and there, but that was the main stuff, I think. Unless you picked up on anything.
I don't think I did. I think you've picked up on most of the stuff. No, my mind's gone blank.
Fair enough. So yeah, as a last bit, Discovery, its place in the Star Trek pantheon. This is the show that brought the franchise back from purgatory, I guess. It was not a thing, really, other than the Abrams Kelvinverse movies, but this brought Star Trek back to TV in a big way. It's had a lot of behind-the-scenes turmoil, as we've talked about before. You've got Simon Fuller, who left the show. Nobody knows what happened there, but it was going to be a very different show under him, and then it turned into what season 1 was. It rebooted itself every year until season 3, basically. So do you think it's a worthy addition to the Star Trek franchise? Do you think it's earned its place? And do you think it should be recognised for obviously being the thing that brought it back? And I think you can't take that away from it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've agreed with you a lot. Don't get used to it.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on. If this had stumbled and fallen so hard on its first outing, we would not have got the other shows that we've got. This one coming back, whatever their plans were, if this had not worked when it first came out, and it was not perfect, listen back to our podcast, it was not perfect, but if it had not managed to get itself established out the gate, then we wouldn't get the additional content that we're getting now. It's definitely in the mix for a really good Star Trek show. And I think it eventually found its feet. Like you said, it was every season they tried to reinvent it a bit. And even once they flung Discovery into the future, they were still trying to sort of reinvent it a little bit and going, right, well, what do we do now? Well, it was inconsistent in that way. And that means that sometimes we've got some really good, strong seasons. Sometimes we've got some pretty weak seasons. But that's most Star Trek shows, really. You get these odd seasons. There's rarely one where it's watch from season 1 all the way through to the end, because every season's perfect. There's so many people that will say, hey, start at season.
It's usually season 3. Yeah, just start at 3.
Usually once you get 3 seasons in, they've found their feet by then.
Anybody that talks about TNG or DS9 or even Voyager as this bastion of unassailable quality, they're kidding themselves. It's not that. There's so many duff episodes there as well, but obviously these are shorter seasons, so if you feel like there's a duff episode, it's a significant percentage of that season. So it feels more impactful because it's not 3 or 4 out of 26 were sucky, but on the whole, it's 3 or 4 out of 13 or 10 or crap.
Yeah, and this being the first one back was also the first one where it wasn't the same episodic format that we were used to. This was, there is a season story going on, or there's at least a half-season story followed by another half-season story that will tie all this up in the bow at the end.
And then we'll move back to wrap up the first story we were doing in the case of season 1.
Well, then we'll finish this off. It was an experiment that if it hadn't worked, we wouldn't have got where we are. I think it deserves a ton of credit for that. I think this was the right season to go out on. As much as I've talked roughly about certain things they could have maybe expanded on or continued with, I think it's had its time, and I don't think it's unfair for it to end at this point, because I'm not sure where they could go next.
No, it'd be another scavenger hunt end of the universe thing. Or
yeah, and if it's a choice between you get a season of Discovery or you get a season of something new that might push a different boundary or explore something else, I would rather that than a weak season of Discovery. Coming back, I think between the cast and the crew and the writers and everything like that, they're probably sitting there going, we don't know what we're going to do next. If they gave us another season, I think there's stuff on the table. I think there's definitely broad ideas probably up there on the board. Like I say, things like we've not done anything with the Klingons yet, etc., is probably written on a wall, but that doth not a season make.
plus, you can see why they would want to move away from Klingons after so much of it in the first 2 seasons.
Exactly. There's reasons to move on for different stuff. So, yes, I think it's been a good contribution to the story. I think it's gone out there and made some bold moves. Spock has a sister. She disappeared on a ship powered by mushrooms. It is a pretty bold move for the canon. So, let's give them credit for being brave enough to do that. So that's why I think it's definitely a worthy piece of the puzzle. Is it going to be folks' favourite? Maybe not. Is it going to be some folks' first? Definitely. There'll be some people that have entered into the world of Star Trek through Discovery because this is the first new Star Trek. It popped up on their streaming service. They watched this, they started watching this, and then went, I want to find out more about the other shows as well, because I'm a completionist like that. And they went off and watched stuff. And if it brings new Star Trek fans in, that's great.
Maybe someone watched the finale and thought, I'm going to watch Enterprise and find out about this Daniels guy. And then you're like, oh, God.
I want to find out all about this Daniels guy. Where did that baseball come from? So many unanswered questions. A bottle of wine. So, yeah, I think it's worthy, if that's what you're saying. How about you? Where are you rating it in the canon? What do you think?
I do think it's an important show for the franchise because, as I said, it brought it back from purgatory when we weren't sure if we were ever going to get that at one point. After Enterprise ended, it was the Wild West, wasn't it? It was, are we ever going to see Star Trek on TV again? And then we did, and it's a big streaming show with lots of money being spent on it. And I think early on they were trying too hard to be edgy and it didn't really work. Remember when they killed off 2 characters in the first couple episodes. Remember Commander Landry, also from Battlestar Galactica? She just got mauled by a giant tardigrade. That happened. So they were trying too hard to be edgy with certain things, and I don't think that really worked. I thought it was a bit juvenile. But I always liked Discovery. And one thing I've definitely noticed that there's a lot of vitriol against it on the internet. People taking these really unnuanced pot shots at it. They'll just insult the show without any backing for it. And it's just, what are you doing? If you don't like it, don't watch it. That's the stance I take with Star Wars. I didn't vibe with The Mandalorian, so I just stopped watching it. And I didn't think twice about it. I don't feel the need to expose myself to something that I hate for just the reason of I've liked things in this franchise before. I'm happy with the fact that not everything will be for me. I've actually gotten something out of everything that Star Trek has had to offer since this post-Discovery relaunch. I've never gotten to the point of not wanting to watch something, so that's good. In Discovery, I've always enjoyed it to some degree. I've always been interested to see what it's going to do. It gave us Anson Mount's Pike as well, and a bit of a Strange New World Season 0 with Season 2 of Discovery, and that's great. Anson Mount's Pike is awesome, and it's good to see him continue from there. This show had good characters as well. It always looked incredible. The storytelling left a lot to be desired in a lot of cases. I was getting a bit fed up with the emotionally driven storytelling because it got to be so saccharine as it went on. I talked about when Burnham disobeyed orders, when Saru was captain and Saru removed her from a position as first officer, and they're both crying about it. It's too melodramatic in a lot of cases. And I think that people turning away from it for that reason is perfectly valid because it is so far removed from what Star Trek had been before. I do think it works in some ways because they are people and it's a different take on the franchise and it's a different take on the storytelling, but I also think that there will be no episode of Discovery that I would say holds a candle to some of the best episodes of Star Trek. I don't think there is one classic episode of Discovery that we can look at and say, that's amazing. I always feel like it could be better. Even Whistle Speak. It was very good, but it could have been better. That's always the case with it. I don't think the people writing Star Trek right now are great science fiction writers. And that applies to any series of Star Trek. So they need to work on that. They need to work on the writing massively in order to keep the franchise going. And when you said this was about the right time to end it, I agree. I won't miss this show, I don't think. And I watched it because it was on, and I would intermittently enjoy it when I was watching it, but I feel like I'm ready to say goodbye to it, which I already have because we're recording after the finale is released. I feel like I'm ready to say goodbye to it. I would like to do a full series rewatch at some point. Maybe soon, actually. Maybe now that it's all over, I could go back and start rewatching it just to see how it flows from season to season, from episode to episode, just to see what it'll be like. Well, there's talk of Stamets' legacy. I wonder what the legacy of Discovery will be. You're looking at TNG 30 years on, DS9 however many years on, Voyager however many years on. What will Discovery be like when it's 30 years from now? Where will that sit in people's memories of it? Maybe it'll get a reappraisal at some point like Voyager and Enterprise have. Maybe it'll just be forgotten. I don't know. Be interesting to see what its legacy is because I feel like it's not going to be one that sticks with me completely. We talked about how indistinct the episodes are, but would there be a random episode of Discovery you would just shove on in the same way you would shove on a random episode of DS9 or TNG? I don't know if you actually do that, by the way, but I do.
I've got ones I'll go to in certain shows, but probably not. But again, that's because it's a different kind of storytelling in Discovery as well. The episodes mean something as part of the whole, whereas if you pick an episode of Voyager, TNG, Deep Space Nine, whatnot, is normally contained. Your conclusion, your through line is in that episode. Yes, you've got knowledge of what came before, but normally you can pretty much watch that one and get the contained story, whereas in Discovery, it's normally part of a season-wide storyline rather than that individual thing. It makes it less likely that you would do that. I just believe that now is the right time for it. Like you say, it sounds brutal to say, oh, I'm not going to miss this. It makes it sound like you're sort of begging for the cancellation. But it's more, I want to see what else they can do. It's like Discovery's had its story. Now let's see what can happen in Academy. Let's see what they do in Strange New Worlds. Let's see what they fill out with elsewhere. And I think that's right. When you talk about legacy, I think depending on where the rest of these shows go, if Discovery spawned Strange New Worlds, essentially, gave us the sort of backdoor pilot to having the Enterprise there, giving us Spock, giving us Pike, introducing all of that, sliding that in. If that then goes off to give us a new version of the original series, essentially, it's close to getting that, isn't it? Season by season.
That's my theory. I say it every year just to make sure that it's still in the zeitgeist.
It's getting closer and closer there. Make sure it's still recorded. Make sure that one guy on Reddit can't claim to be the only one. I think then people looking back might be, oh, that's the show that started it, or that's the show that got me into Star Trek. And I think that might be its legacy, is that there will be people that have come in with Discovery, have moved to Strange New Worlds, who will move to the Academy show, who will watch the straight to TV movie, all that sort of stuff off the back of Discovery. And I think that will be the legacy when people look back. A bit like people who had their favourite Doctor in Doctor Who, and it was the Doctor with them for me, or their James Bond was the James Bond when they were a kid or when they were going to the movies. I think Discovery will fit in that kind of niche with science fiction fans, with Star Trek fans, of being, oh, that's the one that got me into. However good or bad they retrospectively look at it, it will always be that one that got them into the franchise again, or kickstarted the franchise again, or brought back the excitement of Star Trek being on telly again. I think that will probably be the legacy when people look back at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is as much Star Trek as anything else, as much as people would like to tell you otherwise. Oh, it's not real Star Trek. No, it is. It very much is. And you can choose to engage with it or not, but it doesn't make it any less real Star Trek, which is why I have some problems with what they've done to canon in some places. We know that Strange New Worlds takes place in an alternate timeline now, because they told us in season 2, which probably means that Discovery also takes place in an alternate timeline, because it's in the same timeline as Strange New Worlds, kind of. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't. It's a larger discussion. But it is real Star Trek, 100%. And like I say, I won't miss the show as such. I feel like I had my fill of Discovery, and I really want Star Trek to move on to be something else. And I want them to get better writers involved. I want better science fiction writers. I want great science fiction again. And I want it to be brought to us by Star Trek. But that's just not happening right now, because they're stuck in this fan service time loop that they can't seem to get out of, which sucks. I think they can do better. But there doesn't seem to be an appetite to do better. But we can also say that about so many other franchises that we watch. Star Wars, I've already mentioned, the MCU, all of this. They all seem to be stuck in this. We're not writing very well at the moment. We'll see what Strange New World Season 3 brings. Maybe that is the corner that will be turned. Who knows? Who knows? Anything else you wanted to say about Discovery before we end? Before I take you to the middle of nowhere and abandon you and then go home?
What a way to go. I think I'm fine. I think I'm ready for that. To the abyss.
I'm just going to take you out to the middle of a field and then I'll leave.
Disappear off. Wait here for reasons.
Wait here because I said so. Here's a bottle of water. See you later. Well, what a way to end. It's almost perfect. So that was our discussion about Star Trek Discovery's 5th and final season. I would like to thank L'Orchestre Cinematique and Gorkum Burke Ajar for their supplied music. If you like what you heard here, please do subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. It'll be in your feed and there'll be a subscribe button. Also, attached to that is usually a way to rate and review, and usually that's in the form of stars. So Chris, how many stars should people give us as a review?
All of the stars. We want at least 5.
At least 5. If you can do more, give us more, but 5, definitely. If you want to discuss Star Trek Discovery, or Star Trek in general, or anything else, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Blue Sky under Kneel Before Blog, or you can leave a comment on kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. You can also join us on Discord, where we have an engaged community of a listener. Do you want to be our second engaged listener? You can join us on Discord and be that person. How's that sound? Does that sound good? Talk to us on Discord.
Sounds great.
For more in-depth discussions about your favourite nerdy things, interviews, a monthly news podcast, and more, you can join us constantly on Kneel Before Pod. Let's fly.